Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hunter Withrow underway. The Monday edition has arrived. Glad you're with us. If you're streaming live or listening to this great radio partner, we say thank you. Jam-packed show today. Reaction to the college football playoff field that is set through the committee. Florida State out. Georgia loses. They're out. We'll break it down in just a moment. We'll do that as well with Coach Dan Mullen, now with ABC and ESPN. As a college football analyst, he joins us in 20 minutes, plus Bobby Carpenter later this hour, and Ross Tucker throughout the show. A lot of NFL headlines throughout today as well. Chad, good afternoon.
Hutton, no shortage of stuff to talk about from this past weekend.
No, and, no shortage of controversy in regards to the college football playoff and the committee that has Alabama, your SEC champion, in, Texas, your Big 12 champion, in, Florida State, your ACC champion, out. The field of four is, in fact, set. Michigan will take on Alabama. Washington, winners of the Pac-12, will take on the Longhorns from Texas. Florida State out. And before we get into the fact and agree that Florida State, the Seminoles were screwed, this, at least for me, I acknowledge, is going to be one hell of a college football playoff semifinal. I can't wait to watch Michigan take on Alabama, Harbaugh against Saban, and on the other side, personally, I'm rooting for the winner of Washington and Texas to win it all in 2023-24 for the national championship. And whether we like it or not, this offseason, this college football playoff, go back several years as much as you want to, it has been controlled by the networks. All of the realignment, conference realignment, what are we discussing? We're discussing years in advance, not the upcoming season. And we're also discussing what do the networks want? Who wants which conference and why? Which teams are coveted and not? And ultimately, whether we want to admit it or not, then the one argument I haven't heard is that the network is going to point to victory and say the committee got it right because the ratings will be through the roof. They won't know what the ratings would be otherwise, but they're going to point to what is going to be a massive, gigantic number for the college football playoff as Saban and the Tide win the SEC title, oust Georgia, who is your number one team. They're also a one-loss team, losing on a neutral site. They're not in. And throughout the season, they said that, well, conference championships matter. Okay, well, you do have 4 conference champions, but you also have the unbeaten Florida State Seminoles in the ACC out. And if you look at what has happened, even if Georgia won, it seems as though Texas is jumping Florida State in the rankings as it looks right now, based on the hierarchy and the wins throughout the year, despite the one loss. But the one winless team, Chad, the Seminoles, they're left taking on the Georgia Bulldogs in a bowl game. And the season started with Florida State complaining about revenue share throughout the ACC. They'll lose out on a $6 million cut from the conference by not participating in the college football playoff, as will the other teams. They will get $4 million in a payout for the bowl game they're going to, but they didn't want to be in the ACC because of the haves and the have-nots. They wanted their fair share. And, well, the committee's straight up telling all of us that Florida State's right. There are the haves and the have-nots. And the ACC wasn't viewed as an unbeaten champion to be one of the haves, the must-haves for the college football playoff. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, our guy, Tim Brando, I thought had a really good post, a long one about this, and said that absolutely Florida State got screwed. And there is some problems at hand when there's one network that controls the playoff. And they're trying to set things up for better television ratings. And that really pisses me off. And here's why. I love sports because it's the ultimate reality show, okay? And I'm not saying that because on a reality show, producers get in the ear of the people and tell them what to say to make something more inflammatory and make it better television. It's not that part of reality TV that I'm talking about. And that's what I feel like we're dealing with now. We're dealing with a group in ESPN that is basically getting in the ears of everyone on the committee, and they're constantly having back-channel conversations about what the best television is going to be. Hutton laid it out, and he's not wrong about Alabama and Michigan being an enormous ratings draw. Having Nick Saban in this college football playoff, big for ratings and interest because everyone has an opinion on Nick Saban. Everyone should have an opinion on fair and what is right and what is wrong. And this is so incredibly wrong. It pisses me off. And it's had me fired up since this announcement came down yesterday. And I do not want to make this an anti-Alabama thing or an anti-Texas thing or an anti-Georgia thing. Georgia got screwed in this too. Because there's no way you can tell me that one week the committee says they're number one in America, and the next week after a 3-point loss in a conference championship game on a neutral field, they're suddenly the 6th best team in America. If this is truly about getting the 4 best teams, where you're clearly looking at recruiting rankings when you do that, and you're looking at how many NFL draft picks are on each team, you're probably putting Georgia in that top 4 along with Alabama also. But here's what I don't care about. I don't care what the committee thinks will happen. I've been consistent about this throughout. I don't care. Hutton's right. It's going to be good TV, I think, in this. But it's not their job to project what makes the best television. It is their job, and it should be, and I know there's little loopholes in there about injury, and take that stuff out. Make it as simple as possible. Show me what you've done. Show me what you've accomplished, not what you think a team is going to accomplish or not accomplish because they have a backup quarterback. Show me what's happened. Here's something that Florida State did. They scheduled LSU on a neutral field to start the season. The same LSU team that Alabama played. Alabama beat them by 14 at home. You know what Florida State did to them? They beat them by 21 points on a neutral field to open the season. They had 14 tackles for loss. Let's not talk about a backup quarterback for a second. Let's talk about one of the best defenses in the country. They had 14 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, and they also became the first team, this is in the ACC Championship, the first team to hold Jeff Brom under 200 yards in the last 5 years. That happened on Saturday. But sure, I know, backup quarterback, didn't score a lot of points, not sexy enough for the committee, so they would certainly lose, right? Because why? Because Vegas would have them as a double-digit underdog. Oh, the same Vegas that had Washington as nearly a double-digit underdog on Friday night. What happened there? Why do we like sports? Unpredictable. Washington went in there and won that game for a second time when Vegas and the experts thought they were going to get their ass beat. And they did it to Oregon. What happened on Saturday to everyone in the committee? Oh, Alabama was an underdog against Georgia by almost a touchdown. Oh, wow. You mean they play the game on the field and something different can happen? That same Alabama team that's now 4th won the game head-to-head because they played it on the field. All Florida State has done is played great defense and won every game in front of them. And you know who they scheduled in the non-conference? They scheduled Florida State and LSU and at Florida, both away from home. This is not a 2004 Auburn situation where everyone pointed to the fact they played UL Monroe, La Tech, and some other scrub in the non-conference. That's why they didn't get in. No, Florida State scheduled tough in the non-conference. They can't help who's in the ACC and who's down. Just like everyone who feasted on a Big Ten West opponent this year can't help that that's the worst division in the history of college football. They can't help it. Everything they could help. The things that Kirk Herbstreit tweeted and posted years ago to Florida State fans. Stop bitching about your ranking right now because if you win every game, you're going to be fine. That same Kirk Herbstreit is crying on X after this, bemoaning the fact that Florida State is out, but explaining why it happened. They did everything they could, and they still got left out. Explain that to me.
And I think it comes down to, Chad, they have nothing but wins, right? Their biggest loss of the season was Louisville losing to Kentucky. SEC.
Well, their biggest loss this season was losing Jordan Travis.
Well, but their biggest loss, if they beat Louisville coming into that game, with Louisville not losing the final game against Kentucky, again, to me, this is the perception of, and it's Saban's great at standing, on the soapbox and whatever the narrative needs to be to get the tide in, he's going to move the needle on that. Well, I believe we're in because we're the SEC champion, and the SEC beat Louisville going into that game in a matchup where Louisville scores 6 points against Florida State, and it's a low-scoring affair, 16-6. When you have all eyeballs on the number one team in the country falling to Bama, and then, of course, Texas just throttles in their Big 12 championship game. I think it's more about perception of the conferences. I do. If Florida State was on their way to the SEC, let's say they put their paperwork in at the deadline, prior to the start of the year, and they're on their way out, and it's known that realignment's happening and the SEC is expanding. Does Florida State get in? I think they do. And Georgia, if Georgia's in and Bama's in, let's also mention Texas is coming in, and it would be 3 SEC teams, in effect, headed to the college football playoff in the final year of the 14.
And I saw some people, I think Catfish Jake, a buddy of ours, even said, why are people only talking about Alabama getting in over Florida State and not Texas, who's also a one-loss conference champion just like Alabama?
Yeah. And they would be in over FSU too. My
simple answer to that is they wanted both Texas and Bama in the playoff, and they knew they were going to have another controversy on their hands if they didn't put Texas 3 and put Alabama behind them because Texas won head-to-head in Tuscaloosa. So I think they bumped them all the way up to 3. My rankings, what should have happened, Michigan 1, Washington 2, Florida State 3, Texas 4. That's how I would have broken it out for the playoff and still had Texas in ahead of Alabama because of the head-to-head win. But they wanted Bama in. Make no mistake about it. Bama's a TV draw, and Nick Saban is a huge superstar, legendary coach, and it helps to have him in a playoff, and it definitely helps it to have him in a playoff from a TV perspective, production-wise, against the big bad villain in Jim Harbaugh and the cheating Michigan Wolverines. I mean, this stuff writes itself.
Yeah.
I can sell the matchup to you right now, but
and I believe
I don't want everything to go into this made-for-TV mode. I want what's right to be done. And what was right was Florida State, even overcoming the loss of their quarterback and continuing to win and win a conference championship game with a great defense that, by the way, I'm not convinced Michigan just blows them out if they're in the playoff. I think it's probably a 13-10 type game. I think Florida State's defense would do very well against Michigan. Would their offense, the backup quarterback, do well against Michigan's defense? Probably not. But they have earned the right to prove that one way or the other.
I agree.
Based on an undefeated season.
They had earned the right, but I think if you're looking at the resume for Bama, here's what the committee saw. Based on the way the committee ranks the most recent college football playoff rankings prior to conference championship Saturday, and then what happened as a result of Saturday night, they defeated teams ranked number 1, number 11, number 13, and number 21 in the committee's rankings. Bama. So if you're looking at that, and then they beat, according to the committee, the best win Bama has in the entire country, the best win was Saturday over Georgia, they're in. But they wouldn't be in over Texas based on the rankings. And that means that even if Georgia beats Bama, Texas is getting that final spot, Chad. That's what they're telling us.
Yeah.
Through all this, not Florida State. And Bama would be left in the Georgia position for the bowl game.
Yeah, and
facing Florida State.
Right. I think, look, deep down, if you just gave truth serum to every member of the committee, and especially ESPN, they would tell you, they would argue, we don't have a rooting interest. The committee decides. They're going to tell us who the 4 best teams are, this and that. They all wanted Texas and Alabama in there. And they especially love the fact that it's Nick Saban versus Jim Harbaugh.
Or Georgia.
In one of the playoffs.
Or Georgia.
Yeah, the winner, they want an SEC team.
The SEC champion is going to get in, yeah. And that to me, it's not if you lose, it's how you lose. And they, with Florida State, maybe it's the reverse. It's not if you win, it's how you win. But all they've done is win. But the ACC is just not valued where the SEC and the Big Ten, regardless of how bad the Big Ten was. It's just the perception of the schedule, the perception of the dominance. And when you win, how many is it for the SEC winning national championships? Like 11 in this time period, representing the Southeastern Conference. It's dominant. And so whenever you ask yourself, what would Florida State, they have to do these hypotheticals if you've got a tie. I don't know where this ranks in terms of the hypothetical list. Who's only losing one game with Bama's schedule this season in college football?
No, not many. It's
a very short list.
It's a few teams.
But that's another what-if hypothetical. But there's no way you sit in that room and you don't ask yourself that question.
Bama has wins
especially if Texas is already in.
Right. Bama, and I'm just going by the final rankings. Bama has wins over number 6 Georgia, number 11 Ole Miss, Neutral site Georgia, Ole Miss at home, LSU at home at number 13,
Yep.
Tennessee at home, number 21. Florida State has wins in the final ranking on a neutral site against number 13, LSU, on a neutral site against number 15, Louisville. Again, both of those away from home. And they beat Clemson, who's 22nd, on the road. They did all their work, their best wins, away from Tallahassee. That's one less top 25 college football playoff win than Alabama. Transitive properties, they had a shared opponent that they did better against on the road, away from home, than Alabama did at home. You can throw, like, we can play this game over and over because someone said, oh, they beat more 6-6 teams than anyone in America. Is that good? And I'm thinking they beat 3 6-6 teams. Alabama beat 2. That's one more 6-6 team. Oh, well, they only won by 2 against Boston College. Bama just survived on a 4th and 31 against a team that lost by 21 points to New Mexico State the week before. Like, over the course of a season, I could do this all day.
Yeah, I mean,
about both teams.
That's right.
And I don't want to. I think Bama's great, and they've improved all year. I don't want to make this anti-Bama. To me, this is a defense of Florida State and some of the stuff I'm hearing.
And that would have been Oregon in this spot too. You know, Oregon would have been in based on the committee. To me.
Yeah. Now, Davey's going to join us and tell us how UCF in 2017 had a similar resume to the ACC that he tried to on a text chain earlier.
Nah, not so much
Dan
that.
Mullen's actually joining us.
You did throw
He's
that
next.
out to me.
Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network.
Victoria's Secret used to be sexy. On that note, let's talk about Victoria's Secret, because we continually talk about saving women's spaces, their sports leagues, their locker rooms, but we've never actually talked about their dressing rooms in retail stores. Well, now we also are getting the opportunity to talk about that one, because the other day, according to an article by Newsweek, a trans woman started complaining on social media that Victoria's Secret mistreated them because they wanted to use a dressing room in one of their stores. So the trans person tweeted out this, quote, "I was trying to find a cute bra at Victoria's Secret, and they made me wait until every cis woman left the dressing rooms before I could go into one of them. They even made other cis women wait until I had my turn, so no cis woman would have to be in any of the 5 other rooms." Obviously, she's meaning at the same time. So let's just examine this for what it's worth. A biological man, right, was trying on a cute bra. Why? I don't know, because if you were to see the picture of this trans person, there's nothing for the bra to cover, that I can tell at least. I'm not sure why you'd want to wear a bra, because as a woman, I can tell you that bras are not comfortable, and a woman looks forward to wearing a bra. So it's very puzzling why someone would go to all of the trouble to try to find a cute bra. But that's just me talking. Anyways, they were forced to wait by sales associates in order to, of course, protect the privacy of all the other actual women who are using the same space. And to which I say, cry me a river, right? There are so many bigger problems in this world. This does not seem like one of them that should necessarily be addressed or made all that important. Also, hats off to these sales associates, by the way, because it was only a matter of time before Victoria's Secret had to respond to this trans person on X saying this: "We're sorry to hear about your experience in our store, and we'd love to speak with you directly." And then when they were asked about the incident, Victoria's Secret told Newsweek via email, quote, "We are committed to ensuring a great experience for our customers, so we always welcome feedback. Our associates are focused on providing exceptional customer service, especially during this busy shopping season." So here's how I interpreted all of this. When I read this generic response, first and foremost, to the trans person on X, and then Victoria's Secret's very cut and dry corporate explanation to Newsweek, I actually felt kind of convinced that Victoria's Secret may have finally learned their lesson. Because after abandoning their foundational values and going woke several years ago, that is, of course, we've already talked about this on the show several times, when they used to use the hottest women in the world to model and advertise their lingerie, and then they turned to using body-inclusive, plus-size models, also biological men, Victoria's Secret went broke. Just looking at this year alone, in quarter 3, they're down $71 million. So clearly, they're absolutely tanking. So the company has already said it's going to reverse course, get back to sexy, but now these responses tell me that they might actually mean it. I mean, the reply on X to the trans person was very generic. Like any person would probably get complaining for any reason to any company online. Like, for example, if I'm going to complain to Delta Airlines for not giving me a great experience, sounds very similar to what they would tell me.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us for Hot Mike with Hunter Withrow across the OutKick network. Chad, how was the weekend?
It's good. Got to call some high school football games in Chattanooga. Rainy all day in Chattanooga. Not great conditions for the players in the field, but nice and toasty up in the booth. A little warm for my liking, but dry.
Yeah, well, good.
Complained about that the whole time, so I'd like to be a little bit cooler.
Not bad. Not bad.
Good weekend for you?
Solid. Great games, by the way, throughout the weekend. And, you know what the other argument can be used on behalf of Florida State is, how about the catch? The incomplete pass before halftime for Bama that led to a touchdown drive. Georgia ends up losing by 3 in this. However, as we've said, like the committee's telling us, Texas would have jumped FSU too.
Hutton, the committee knows. We cannot challenge the committee. They know football. They don't need to see anything else. They're just going to tell us who the 4 best teams are. That's how we decide.
Yeah. Coach Dan Mullen joins us, ABC and ESPN college football analyst, does a great job. Oh, and by the way, he's staying behind the screen and the stress-free zone for Dan Mullen. Coach, great to have you back on. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing awesome. I was going to do my commitment video. I was going to have all the different schools, jobs open, right? And then rip out the ESPN hat and throw it on my head,
So what did the committee tell us or tell an unbeaten conference champion yesterday?
Well, the problem I have is there's no consistency with the committee from one year to the next. And, when you say, okay, who's the best team? Let's just go hide behind best team. I have a hard time with that because the best teams that wins. In my mind, winning teams are the best teams, I think they have too many little excuses to hide behind in how they did it. I'm not sure they have enough football people on there. In that, I guess they want to try to keep random people from everywhere. But I don't like it. If that was the criteria a couple of years ago, an undefeated Cincinnati, and nothing against Cincinnati and that team, and what a great year they had. That team in a major conference would have had 4 to 5 losses, I would have said. So you're going to say, but then they're like, you can't compare this or compare that. So I did the meetings. I just don't think there's information. I think what they did was disrespectful to the game of football. And disrespectful to anybody that's played the game of football or coached in the game of football or really be a part of it. I'm going to go even from the media side, going away from that. The people that are inside of football, okay, for 18 to 22-year-old college students, you know how hard it is to go undefeated? I have 2 national championship ranks here. Neither of them were undefeated seasons. I don't think people understand. I have a high school state championship, not undefeated. I don't think how hard people understand how hard that is to do. So I think it was disrespectful to the game to hide behind who the best team was. Because if you're just going to pick subjectively who the best team is, why play the games? Because all your life, Georgia's the best team. So why should they even have to play week 1? They were told they were the best team. So why even play another game? We're the best. Don't play again. That was frustrating for me.
And going back to your broad point about this, and I completely agree with you. The argument that's out there, and I think Nick Saban actually made this argument last year when he was out publicly politicking to get in the playoff. Well, Vegas would have us favored against all the teams, or 3 of the 4 that are in there. Vegas says this, it's going to be a double-digit underdog if it's Florida State in this thing, so you can't have them in there because then people may not watch. That really bothers me after we've seen an entire season's worth of work that we're now projecting.
I don't think Nick, then, if Nick wants to really jump on that, he shouldn't have gone and played in the SEC Championship game. You're an underdog. Why have you in the game? You're a 5-point underdog. Just let's crown Georgia the champion and move on. And nothing gets Alabama. Let's get this straight. The committee, I don't want to say they weren't wrong putting Alabama in. If that makes like Alabama earned their right in. And I hate this, who deserves to be in the term. Deserve has nothing to do with it. These teams go out and play every week. Nobody deserves anything except they have the opportunity to go play and they earn it on the field. And so Alabama earned it just as much as anybody else. But what I look at is in this year, someone's going to get left out and there's 4 spots. And so the teams that earned it the most, the teams that went out there, because you can compare anything you want to compare, and let's compare the most important thing, which is the column of losses, right? And Mike Norvell said it great the other day. You heard him yesterday. Hey, we earned our 13 wins, but everybody else, they also earned a loss. They earned that loss on the field. We never earned one of those. Everybody else earned a loss. And, I did it on the show last night. I said, right now it's like figure skating. And, you're out there and saying, okay, well, we're going to pick who wins. We're going to subjectively pick. Well, there was an objectivity, which there are 3 teams that never lost. So if you take them 1, 2, and 3, and they're in a Power 5 conference, and you know what? The strength of rank was Florida State. It wasn't like they didn't play a quality team all year. They played some pretty darn good teams within the ACC. They went out of conference and scheduled Florida and LSU and won both of those games, neither of which were at home. You have to go with they were not at home for the Florida, Clemson, or LSU game and won all of those games. And Louisville, they weren't at home for any of those games. 2 neutral sites, 2 roads. They won all of them against top teams. So I think I would have been fine with Florida State at 3, and then you make the argument to the last 3, which is Texas, Alabama, really Texas 4, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. And then if you look at them and say Ohio State didn't make a championship game, they're out. Okay. Then let's go to Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. Well, Alabama beat Georgia. Texas beat Alabama. They're in because they won it on the field. I think those should have been the 4 teams that made it in, and I mean, unfortunately right now, how they're hiding, I guess, in the committee saying the best team. Well, according to everybody, on Saturday, Georgia was the best team. So, Georgia was the hands down number 1 best team in the country. So, they only lost by 3 to Alabama. They should have stayed one of the best teams. Honestly, on a neutral site, if they played a couple more times, they probably split it. And you could say Georgia's better than Alabama. But so you have to be consistent in how you do things. And it can't be the East German committee judge member, in a figure skating competition, ranks Florida State 20th to knock them out so that Alabama can get in because they like them more. It's like the SEC's like the old Eastern Bloc figure skating contest, right? Or the gymnastics, they're judging that the SEC. I think they felt they had to be in. And Alabama, like I said, Alabama earned the right to be in. Someone had to be left out. I could have, personally, I could find a way to accept the reason why Alabama, I could rationalize why Alabama was left out if they were. I have a hard time justifying why Florida State was left out. I just really have a hard time justifying that as a college football person.
Well, and the reason would be Texas beat them in Tuscaloosa, and Texas would still be in this playoff if Florida State were in, right? Like, it comes down to that head-to-head.
Yeah, unfortunately, Alabama and Georgia would have been left out. And are they 2 of the best teams in the country? Absolutely. Ohio State's one of the best teams in the country. So is Oregon. I mean, if we said right now, Oregon, we're going to go to the Vegas. I bet if you played Oregon and Washington again next week, I bet Oregon would be the favorite again, just for the third time.
By 8 points instead of 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's unfortunately they've gone subjectively when they could have done objectively, but it's hard because, as we say, there were 5 teams that earned playoff spots. Someone had to get left out. I just feel Alabama certainly earned. I feel they left the wrong team out. So, you know, I mean, unfortunately, I would have felt bad if Alabama. I feel bad for Georgia. You know, I mean, 2-time defending champ with 1 loss, but and they're out. But they had the chance to win it on the field. I mean, Florida State never got that opportunity. They did. They won it on the field and said, no, you're not getting that. And I don't think that part of it was right.
Dan Mullen, our guest. You can follow him on social at Coach Dan Mullen. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow here across the OutKick network. So what do you tell your team after a moment like that? They've got a bowl game coming up. Again, it's a tough spot. And also, you know, in recruiting, you can go unbeaten in the ACC and you won't make it to a 14 playoff. Now we're going to 12 and maybe they don't use it as much. But the perception of the ACC in this versus the SEC is evident in what happened.
Well, throw the spin on it for them for next year as we get the bye in the first round of the playoffs, because it's the conference champions get the bye. And so we would get the bye, and somebody else, no matter where we are, we're going to get the bye. And that's going to make it easier for us to win a title. So they can spin that how they want. You know, Mike Norvell and I listen, people think there's tough things coaches go through. There's a lot of tough things, and it's not what you're calling on 3rd down and 5. You know, those aren't the tough things. You know, what he had to deal with last night is looking at a group of men, young men that you're going to lead and playing a game that they love, that have committed and done everything that they were supposed to do. And someone took it away from them, really stole it from them. You know, I mean, took it away from them. And I think that, you know, that was wrong. And so I think he has to find a way, you know, never mind his own grief. I mean, of sitting here of saying what he put in, the sacrifices he makes, his family makes, all the coaching staff, you know, the time they spend, all the work that they put in, you got to immediately put that away, swallow it, and get out of your own way. And you got to go back to leading these young men and giving them life lessons and saying, hey, you know what? I always shared this with guys. If you put yourself out there and try, you can't guarantee you will succeed. I can guarantee you won't succeed if you don't try. So you know what? Hey, you guys put yourself out there. You did everything you could. It didn't happen. Don't use that as an excuse to not put yourself out there again. In whatever it is you're doing in life, continue to put yourself out there again. Because more times than not, if you do it, you give it all like you did, things will break your way. And the only time, right, there's no failure in losing. There's no failure of that team for this year. There would be failure in giving up or not trying. And I think that's the message that he kind of said in his deal that I liked yesterday. It's like, what are we supposed, am I supposed to tell these kids, if someone gets hurt, don't try? I can't wait. If God forbid, Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts goes down, the last week of the season, I guess we should leave them out of the playoffs in the NFL for sure this year. For sure. They should have no chance. They should definitely be left out.
Yeah.
Right.
Well said. And something else that bothers me is this response that now future results will justify any decision by the College Football Playoff Committee. An example is, well, now watch Florida State get blown out by Georgia. That's going to show everybody they made the right decision. Or Alabama's going to beat Washington, and Michigan. That's going to prove they made the right decision. I don't think you can play with that level of hypothetical on it. And because we don't know what would have happened if Florida State was the 3 seed, let's say, against Washington, the scenario you laid out there.
No idea what would have happened. And to say, hey, to compare what's going to happen in the Georgia game, can't compare it. You can't compare for either team. I listen, because it's a different makeup. It's going to be a different psychology of those teams playing in the game. We haven't gotten to who's opted out yet of the games, right? I mean, I guess if should the committee wait? You saw today, Kyle McCord entered the transfer portal. I don't know if he's playing in the bowl game or not. If Ohio State had been selected, do we have to wait now? Because we've put a criteria. The only reason they weren't selected is their quarterback was injured. And the hard one for me is last week, the committee ranked them number 4. I think that's where the mistake was made. With Tate Rodemaker at quarterback, they were the number 4 team in the country. Well, Tate Rodemaker is supposed to be back for the bowl game. They went in and put one of the great defensive performances I've seen in college. Let's not discredit what happened in that game where they held Louisville. I think people like it's an ugly game. Well, you know what? Iowa was playing too, and Iowa-Michigan was not a pretty sight to be seen either. Okay. But they held Louisville with the game on the line to negative 23 yards of total offense in the fourth quarter. I mean, basically, you're watching the game and Louisville sitting there saying, one score and we win. It's over. All we have to do is score. In fact, all we have to do, like a blocked punt, interception, anything. And the defense went and held them to negative 23 yards. They went backwards 23 yards the entire fourth quarter. That was a masterful performance. I mean, we ran rave. I will say this, the possible winner is college football because I think the matchups that we got are as good. And I'm not talking the playoffs. I'm talking when I'm looking at bowl games. There are some unbelievable bowl matchups that we have moving forward. Now, unfortunately, in today's bowl world, we don't know who's going to play in those games and the opt-outs and all of the different things going on and who's transferring and, NIL money. I guess if we're paying the players, they should play the game and at least finish the bowl game. But the matchups are going to be unbelievable. From playoffs all the way through New Year's Six to, to other bowl games are fantastic.
Coach, thank you as always. We love the perspective. We'll catch up soon.
Yeah, great to be with you guys.
Bobby Carpenter joins us next on Hot Mic with Hunter Withrow.
Hey, here's a feel-good story. You ready? And this needs to be talked about more. Lost in all of the, hey man, inspire change, Whitey's bad of the NFL. There are folks in the NFL that are, great dudes. The Carolina Panthers have a player named Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst is doing something that everybody in sports should do. Yeah, I know everybody in sports should try to be a rapper. Yeah, I know like Von Miller, everyone in sports should get their side piece to not freaking talk about your indiscretions. Yeah, I know everybody in the NFL as a wide receiver has to act like a damn idiot. I get all that. I do, I swear. But Hayden Hurst, he ain't like that. Hayden Hurst is trying to shed light on veterans with suicide and suicide prevention. That's a good thing. No, it's a really good thing. Suicide's a major issue, and it's only going to get worse. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a separate issue, but lack of parenting. Do whatever you want leads to suicide. People want direction. People want purpose. People want guardrails. People don't want to be left free. They get depressed. They get depressed if you don't have anybody giving you direction. And that's the society of parents that we're living in. Suicide rates among teenagers are at all-time high, and I hate to say this, but they're only going to go higher. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but that's what's going to happen. When you have a lack of parenting, when you let kids run free, drugs, alcohol, whatever they want in our current society are actually sometimes made available by idiot parents. I had a friend who let his kid drink in my house, and I'm like, you're an idiot. I love him. He's one of my best friends, but you're an idiot. It ain't cool. It ain't smart. It ain't fun. It's stupid. I can't even imagine my kids asking me to do that in our house. But anyway, that's parenting. That's where parenting is headed. But when you go overseas and you are in a war, and that war involves killing, you killing somebody, you seeing devastation, you seeing what a bomb can do to a town, the horrific things that our veterans have seen and had to do. Of course, that comes home with you. What do you think you do? You flip a switch, you come home, and you never think about it. Hell, I think about things that I did 10 years ago that weren't even bad. 20 years ago. Like, why did I do that? That's stupid. I mean, the only perfect people, as we know, are writers, media guys. They're the only ones. They're the only ones that are absolutely perfect. Even when they have affairs, even when they do stupid stuff, they write it off as, well, I was figuring life out. We as the rest of us don't have that same grace. And veterans come home and they're like, oh, man. Can you imagine? Let me just give you a scenario. Let's just say you are in charge of taking a hill and you and your guys gunned down 50 people. You think that just leaves you? You think that just goes away when you come back to a nation that hates you, that doesn't respect you, that doesn't help you, that treats illegal immigrants better than you? Hell no.
Hot Mike with Hunter Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, did you know that the OutKick store is back?
It is.
It has been declared back.
It's back. Well, all caps, back.
It is back.
Back. I love
OutKick
it.
store playing on a new field. That's right. The new OutKick store just launched, and to celebrate, we're offering a buy one, get one 50% off deal for a limited time. You can find our favorite polos, T-shirts, and more when you visit shop.outkick.com, and you score 50% off. All you got to do is visit shop.outkick.com and add those items to your cart, and the discount will automatically be applied. Not
It's
bad.
back. It's
right.
back, baby. You know who else is back? Our next guest.
Bobby Carpenter joins
He's
us.
back for another week.
Sirius XM, Channel 84, and much more. A man of many talents, and he joins us each week to give his analysis of college football and more. Good to see you, Bobby. Hope things are well, man.
Well, doing great, guys. How are we doing here on this Monday post CFP Mount Vesuvius eruption?
So, how bad did the College Football Playoff Committee get it in regards to Florida State in your mind?
Well, I mean, you have to ask yourself the question: how did they get it wrong? I think they actually got it right with the teams. And I don't know. I think there's probably, looking at Florida State, sans Jordan Travis, which looks a lot like Penn State to me. You know, someone's like, Penn State has 2 losses. I'm like, I get that. I said without Jordan Travis, and all schedules aren't created equal. That's why we have this subjective committee, because people said, I didn't want to have a computer tell me that this 28-17 victory was the same as that 28-17 victory. So
and the BCS would have Florida State in today. It's funny.
Of course they would.
Yeah.
They're an undefeated Power 5 national champ. The problem is that we wanted this subjectivity so that we could see the best teams play against each other at the highest level. And Florida State without Jordan Travis isn't that. And it stinks. I know Florida State could have still gotten in. And this is what people they get frustrated with this, because there's really no retort to it. I go, it wasn't taken out of Florida State's hands. If they would have beaten Florida like they should have, 35-7 with Tate Rodemaker, and then, you know, maybe they win with their third team quarterback, Brock Glenn, against Louisville, 24-7, I think they probably still get in. But the reality was that without Jordan Travis, that offense looked stagnant. It wasn't very good. Their defense is still great. They still won 13 games. Like, all of those things can be true, but Oregon's better than Florida State right now. Georgia's better than Florida State right now. Ohio State's better than Florida State right now. And that's just factually accurate. Now, that's my belief. I also thought Oregon was going to beat Washington. So, you know what? You can be wrong in that. But I think if you look at those teams in Vegas and how they're handicapped, that would tell you. But like I said, also Oregon was, 10-point favorite against Washington. So I don't know. I think they got the best 4 teams in. Florida State, I think, would have probably lost by 10 or more points to any of those other teams, but we'll never really know at this point.
So you don't believe Georgia's one of the 4 best teams right now?
Gosh, I don't know. The irony is, like, people think, like, well, if they put Georgia at 6, and their only loss was to Bama, how could they be consistent? I go, first of all, don't apply logic here, because after the top 4, it doesn't really matter. So they're throwing Florida State a bone, like, hey, you're 5 and not 6. But I mean, does it matter if you're 5th or does it matter if you're 10th? Because the first spot out is still the first spot out. It doesn't really put you in there. I don't know. Here's the thing, Georgia, their schedule was so weak this year, and they rose up and played really tough against some against good teams and beat them handily most of the time. Um, it's like people start talking about Bama. I'll tell you what, the thing that throws a wrench in just about all this is the Auburn Tigers, because I watched them lose. I didn't even watch. I saw some highlights of them lose and saw a little bit of the game to New Mexico State, for heaven's sake. And they played Alabama and they played Georgia as tough as anybody in college football. And that's not even a good team. So I'm not sure what the hell to make about any of this stuff.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that bothers me about it, Bobby, is we kind of flipped the script this year. And I went back, and some people have been reposting Kirk Herbstreit from years ago, getting into it with Florida State fans in 2014 and telling them, hey, don't worry about the college football playoff rankings right now where you are. If you win out, you're definitely in. If you take care of your own business, you're going to be in the playoff. I think that's what I thought, most everyone else. Hey, if you're an undefeated Power 5 champion and you schedule LSU away from home, you play Florida away from home, you beat LSU more than Alabama beat LSU by at home, and you beat them on a neutral site in that game, then you're going to be in. And I know, look, I don't want to make this too corny. You have kids, I have kids. I like to tell them that what I love about sports is it's a meritocracy, and it's objective and not subjective. And now I feel like we've gotten to do a big beauty pageant. I feel like this is a Hollywood casting call when they're trying to name the teams they feel are the best. And I don't disagree with it that Alabama's one of the 4 best, but I also saw Florida State go undefeated.
And the results on the field should matter. And I think the problem is once Georgia got beat, you couldn't put Texas in, like you couldn't put in Alabama without putting in Texas as well. And so that's where that log jam ultimately happened. And unfortunately, Florida State was sitting on the outside. And what you're saying is true. Like, it's supposed to be a meritocracy. What you do on the field should count to get you in there. They turned it a little bit, maybe more into a beauty pageant. And the subjectivity is what we wanted, because the BCS and the computers didn't know. And so we chose to go to this model. And frankly, the BCS still incorporated the polling system and everything else. But college football, the national championship, for years was just voted on. Like, it's always been a subjective metric. Now, as we get to a 12-team playoff, yeah, a lot of that subjectivity is going to go by the wayside, because when you get 12 teams in there, maybe you leave a team or two out every year that could have done it every other year. But mostly you're going to have the best teams at the top. I feel for Florida State. I really do. And if you look at the numbers, like you said, they beat 2 SEC schools. LSU let them down for not being better. And then ultimately the ACC let them down. But if you look at this, I believe the ACC had a winning record against the SEC this year. So it really just comes down, guys, to the committee looking at this. And poor Boo Corrigan, who is the NC State AD. I mean, it's not like he's the one that unilaterally decided this. He's not the football czar. He is not the Fuhrer that just comes out there and issues these commands. He's only a mouthpiece for this. And so he's going to take a lot of heat within his own conference. But this is kind of where we're at. This is what we all wanted, and now we're living with it for at least this season, where everybody's furious.
Bobby, it's also Transfer Portal Monday, with the portal officially opening. Some big quarterback news out there, starting with Kyle McCord in Columbus entering the transfer portal. Is this a sign to you that Ohio State has made a decision about where they're going to go at quarterback, and it's currently someone else that's in the portal?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not 100% positive on what they're going to do with the portal and where they would go with that. There's a lot of, you look at the quarterbacks, there's a lot of good players in there. And if we take Matt Rule and what he said realistically, I mean, those guys, top 10 dudes, are standing to make $1 million to $2 million. And so can I really blame a kid for getting in there and wanting to do this? And I'm of the belief, Ryan's pretty honest with his players. Probably had a meeting with Kyle, maybe his family over the weekend. They talked about it, and I don't know who instigated it, where, hey, whether we want to be assured that we'll be the starter next year, or Ryan telling him, hey, we're going to open some things up and look around. It'll be a battle. You won a quarterback battle this year. I can't make any promises. And if you have 1 year left, a little bit like Joe Burrow, when he left Ohio State, he was able to leave via being a grad transfer. But if he didn't leave then, he would have had to sit out, and it wouldn't have been the same situation. So at some point for these guys, like, you have to make that choice. And you know what? There probably was that conversation that occurred, based upon how I think Ryan operates. And, it stinks. But this is kind of where we're at now in college football, and it's not unique to Ohio State. You look at Dylan, Gabriel, Riley, Leonard. I mean, all these guys are jumping in, and they can enrich themselves a little bit and maybe find a better situation.
Bobby, if I give you Alabama and Texas or Michigan and Washington, which two are you picking to win a title?
Ooh, that's tough. Man, I'll tell you this before we go there. Those were the games that I wanted to see in the two matchups because I think it's a lot like in the final year of what college football kind of is. I was like Michigan and Washington at the Rose Bowl, like seeding be damned. Like two Big Ten Pac-12 teams in the Rose Bowl. That looks good. You got Texas and Bama in the Sugar Bowl geographically. It aligns. Yeah. It's a good spot. Like that to me would. Plus, you get the rematch of that. Like it would have been tremendous. Oh my gosh, it's hard not to go against Bama just with the success that they've had. Plus, you watch what Texas has done. But I'm going to tell you what. I got to give a lot of credit to Jim Harbaugh and Michigan. I think this is their best team, and it may not always be pretty. And I think they hold a lot back, but they'll have some stuff. And honestly, this Washington team, as much as we tried to crap on Florida State, people were trying to do the same thing to Washington. Sure. Guys, they were an undefeated team, had already had a win over their conference rival. There was a 10-point dog going into the game. So there's something about this Washington team, too, where we're like, they're not very tough. They can't play defense. And then I start watching that game, like, man, they're running all over Oregon, and they're better on defense in this game, at least, than we've seen for a while.
We saw the reaction from Florida State when they realized they were not in, and Bama was. What do you think the reaction was like from Michigan that was just stoic and just stared straight ahead, but behind the scenes with the coaching staff knowing that it's Alabama and it's not Florida State?
It's probably a tough pill because I think Bama's playing as well as anybody right now, and that's probably why they got in, over Georgia or anybody else. Simply not winning the SEC, but the fact that they're playing really good football. I think that it's a chance at maybe some redemption for them. If you look back, a couple of years ago, how they play against the SEC.
That's what I thought too.
I think that, and I think this Bama team is good. The guys like we just talked about, we watched them play that against Georgia. And then I know Jordan Hare's tough as heck to play and on the plains, but like against an Auburn team that isn't very good. And Michigan runs the ball well. And they're going to have a mobile quarterback, and they're going to be able to do some stuff, and they play really good defense. So I think that, I think probably them looking stoic is they knew that they were going to get in. It was just a function of them being one or two and who they were going to play. And I think a lot of people thought they would ultimately be one, so they get to go to the Rose Bowl. But I don't think that I think they would have preferred Florida State guys as anybody would have, but I don't think it's this like audible gasp like it would have been if you had to play like Georgia last year or someone else like that.
Bobby, when they announced the division split in the Big Ten, did you ever foresee a scenario where the Big Ten West would go 0-10 in the history of that Big Ten championship game with the divisions?
I mean, 0-10,
That's
and
tough.
Also being shut out in their last performance. Cool. I mean, it was really indicative of what it had kind of become on the West and why it needed to go divisionless and break protocol, because guys, the over-under point total for Iowa in the first half was 0.5 point. And I told someone, I'm like, I honestly can't find a good reason to take the over. It's not an over-under. It's a question. Will they score? And this is how ludicrous it was. I had multiple people saying, they could get a turnover, maybe get the ball in the red zone and get a field goal. They've forced a lot of safeties, which Iowa has forced a lot of safeties the last couple of years. This is what you're relying on. I can't rely on any of that. So it stinks, and I don't know if you want to see an Ohio State Michigan rematch, back-to-back weeks. That's what it would have been. And maybe that's more entertaining. I know it's more entertaining. It would have been better for the TV viewing audience. But we're in a new era now. And so I think it, ended probably the way that it should have, with Iowa getting shut out. And now you're bringing in 4 teams that are out West that really know how to play a lot of offense.
That definitely stuck to the script on championship weekend, Iowa, and their performance. Bobby, always appreciate it, man. Thank you for joining us today and helping us break down what was a crazy college football weekend.
Anytime, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
There's Bobby Carpenter at BCarp3. Check out his great work, Sirius XM Channel 84, and much more there with Jacob Hester, one of his great friends. Do a great job there.
He's very good.
Chad, I think the public sentiment is can't wait to watch these games. But coming up, I want to get into a comment you made about, well, the rooting interest for the average fan now among these four teams. And maybe it's flipped a bit considering what you were hoping would happen that didn't happen in the regular season and what did happen on championship weekend that may have us going for the anti-hero. He's the villain that we don't want, but we all need, apparently.
Maybe.
The Wolverines.
Maybe.
We'll see. Coming up, top headlines, plus Ross Tucker in hour number 2.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the second hour is here, the Monday edition of Hot Mic with Enda Withrow across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us.
We're rolling along here.
That's right.
I'm already 1 hour down.
Yeah.
OutKick Store is back just in time for the holidays. We got so much going on.
That's right. OutKick Store, it's playing on a new field. That's right. New OutKick Store just launched, and to celebrate, we're offering a buy one, get one 50% off deal for a limited time. You can find our favorite polos, T-shirts, and more when you visit shop.outkick.com and score 50% off. All you got to do, visit shop.outkick.com and add those items to your cart. Discount will automatically be applied. Chad will even fold the shirt for you. He's a master folder.
I am. I need to do a tutorial one day on the show. Once I get my folding board back, I may just run out to the Polo Ralph Lauren outlet. And make sure I get the folding board and I can do a tutorial. We can get one of the shirts out here in the Old Smoky gift shop, and I can fold for you guys. Show you how it's done.
Well, they have a folding board here.
I'm a better folder than the College Football Playoff Committee is pickers of what's fair, right, and honest. I can tell you that.
So we've got the matchups. Michigan takes on Bama, and it's Texas and Washington in the college football playoff. What's interesting is comparing the computer model, BCS, to what the committee did. Bama gets in both top fours. They're in. Texas is the one that's left on the outside looking in according to the BCS.
They have Florida State in, though.
Florida State's
computer,
in.
Yeah.
Florida State's in. Texas is not. Both the committee and the BCF has Georgia 6. They both have Ohio State 7. They both have Oregon 8. They have Missouri and Penn State either 9 or 10 in some fashion. Ole Miss is 11 in both polls. Oklahoma's 12. LSU's 13. I mean, to me, there had to be some analytical, some algorithm they're going by to have it match up this close to what it was. Really, the only discrepancy is Texas. And Texas is going to get in even if Georgia won the SEC title, based on the way that the committee's telling things stacked up, because Texas is at 3. But the 3 can be a 4 because they don't want to have the automatic rematch between Texas and Alabama until the potential national championship game. So that's why you see it the way it was.
I really think they just wanted to find any way to get both Texas and Alabama in those brands, and they knew to do that, to not have another battle on their hands, they needed Texas at 3 and Alabama 1 spot behind them because of the head-to-head issue they had with Texas winning at Alabama. Did not want to put Texas behind Alabama in that situation. And I think that the committee found a way to do that, and in doing so, they screwed over 13-0 Power 5 champion that won some big games throughout the year. And I'll say this, too, for the Dan Mullen argument, who was great on that college football selection show, by the way, when he went after Trevor Maddich on air with that and laid everything out very logically. I'm not convinced that, and I love Washington, but I'm not convinced that Florida State, with Tate Rodemaker, who, by the way, will be back, would have been back for the playoff, I'm not convinced they don't give Washington a really good game, and that's very compelling. If my scenario was laid out and it's Florida State at 3, Washington 2 in that game,
right,
and then Texas at 4 taking on Michigan at number 1, we saw Washington, and again, we can do this with every team, right? We saw Washington have to survive on a last-second field goal against Washington State to win the Apple Cup. We saw them survive on a 96-yard pick six to beat lowly Arizona State. We saw them struggle with If that Washington team shows up, Florida State's got a great shot to play for a national championship if that game happens. I'm not just writing them off because they have a backup quarterback. Oh, by the way, that backup quarterback has another month to get ready with the team for that game, and they've got a defense that just put up a historic effort in the ACC Championship game. Coach Mullen laid out minus 23 yards in the fourth quarter is what they gave up. Held Jeff Brom's Louisville team to under 200 yards of offense for a Jeff Brom coach team. It's the first time in 5 years. Held LSU and Jaden Daniels, the likely Heisman Trophy winner, to his lowest output of the year. Held him to over 100 yards less rushing than Alabama did when LSU went to Tuscaloosa also, mind you. So I just, we can do this round and round with everyone and really nitpick everyone's resume, but 13-0 conference champion should have won out. Hutton, and going back to before the season, because now there's a lot of people looking at it saying, well, why even play the games? Because this is kind of what people thought to start the year, and they're picking favorites based on what they think of each roster at the end of the year.
Yeah.
When Florida State beat LSU, when that game happened, I remember in the preseason. By the way, this football season has flown by. Feels like 3 weeks ago we had this discussion.
It does.
But we said, look, Florida State's got a great shot if they win this game
to get to the playoff.
They may win out. Now, it looked better after Clemson lost to Duke in that first week, too, knowing they had a trip to Clemson, which was a very tough game for them also. And Clemson's not bad. Clemson's not great either, but they have a lot of talent.
Very inconsistent.
Winning at Clemson is not easy.
Right.
People want to say, well, winning at Clemson is never going to be
it's
easy.
Like winning in Tuscaloosa.
For an ACC team. Absolutely. So I just think even in that game when it happened, I'm thinking the winner of this game may have an inside track at the college football playoff, whether it be LSU or Florida State. And Florida State dominated that game. They won by 3 touchdowns against LSU that night.
Yep. And, I'm looking around college football and the discussion, the 2 primary talking points throughout the season. It was Deion in Colorado, or it ended up being Harbaugh in Michigan. But, Chad, you mentioned something last night that, you know what this has done? This has possibly made me root for the Michigan Wolverines to win it based on the disdain that college football, that the NCAA has for that program currently, for that coach currently. But yet they're number 1 in the country, and they've done a disservice to a team that, by all accounts, has done it the right way, albeit they're having to go about it the way they don't want to without Jordan Travis at quarterback in Florida State. They're left out. Michigan, meanwhile, you could say they're being punished by not having to play Florida State. We won't know that. They get Bama instead. They'll have to prove it there and then prove it in the title game. But if they win back-to-back games, they're your national champion. And then eventually the NCAA will remove a banner or remove a championship flag in the stadium. But it'll all be said and done that they had to go through Bama and potentially go through Texas to win it all.
I'm really torn here in terms of rooting interest, because since this scandal started, I've been waiting for anyone to do the Lord's work and knock Michigan out of the playoff. And they just continue to win. Michigan is a winning football program, and they continue to find ways to win. And this time, we don't think it involves any Connor Stalions-related hijinks that's helped them win in this instance. So I look at this, and this is not me being anti-Bama, because I have no issue with this Bama team or Jalen Milroe or anyone there. But Hutton, I'm just predicting all of the BS I'm going to hear across social media the moment Alabama beats Michigan. And then, you still think Florida State should be in there? You think Bama doesn't belong? Roll Tide. You don't think Bama should be here? Look at what they just did to Jim Harbaugh.
They did the Lord's work.
I don't want to hear that. So because I don't want to hear that, I think I'm go blue right now. I think I'm a Michigan fan in this game. I didn't think there was anything that could get me to root for Michigan in a college football playoff scenario. This might be the one. And it's not anti-Alabama. It's anti the fact that we're going to have every Alabama person and every SEC homer come out and say, well, there you go. That's why Florida State's not there. That's why, they didn't get shafted. They're not that good. It's the lowly ACC. ACC sucks. And that's why they're not there. And look at Bama. I don't want to hear all of that. So go blue. Go Michigan.
See, I'm all on board with the Crimson Tide and the coaching and this coaching staff and what they've done with this group. Considering where they were.
Well, I don't look.
Considering where they were to where they are.
I don't need Nick Saban's had enough titles.
That's fine. But Nick Saban was being retired by this show in September. Nick Saban was go off into the sunset and go be on College Game Day instead of coaching this team.
I still think he should. I think he's done enough in coaching. How many titles are enough at this point? Like the guy's great. He did a good job with this team. But keep in mind also with Bama, it wasn't just the loss to Texas. They played at South Florida the next week and looked awful.
Yeah,
and rotated quarterbacks, right? And then
they didn't even play him.
Yeah, and then they came back a completely different team. Look, my hat's off to Alabama. This is not me saying they're undeserving. I just think Florida State is more deserving. And the right thing to have done was to put them in, and I think put Texas right behind them because they have the head-to-head with Alabama. But do I think Alabama could win the national title? Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I may pick them to win the national title based on the group of 4 teams that are left.
The team that I want to win is Washington.
I'm self-aware enough. This is what gets me. I'm self-aware enough to know that what I think might happen or will happen based on NFL talent and coaching and everything else, while that's great and we love to talk about it and we all have opinions about sports and college football and makes it fun, that should not be the deciding factor. The deciding factor should be exactly what happened over the course of the season. And I think when you stack all of that up, there's no way Florida State should have been left out.
I think it's a great storyline, though, that Michigan, according to Harbaugh, has assembled the greatest team in the history of the Wolverines football program. 20 some odd NFL caliber players on the roster, whatever.
Yeah.
And they're facing Bama, who benched their starting quarterback soon after the season kicked off, only to go back to him, who loses to Texas in the trenches, which is something that Michigan's trying to improve on and try to prove it in the SEC and against opponents in the college football playoff. I should also mention the Big 12 to give TCU some props, too, from last year. And now we get to see the matchup at the Rose Bowl where Saban's got his group back at the end of the year by beating Georgia, which was the mantra of Michigan in the offseason. They had a Georgia period in practice. Bama took care of that. And now they've got to go through the Crimson Tide and the GOAT, while Harbaugh is, looked at as, the pariah based on everything he's either doing or didn't know about and what he's talking about, which is revenue share. He continues to preach that. I'm all for with the players. He continues to harp on that too, and that's another red flag for the NCAA. It's the reason why they don't like him. Point being, it's rare that Bama will be looked at as the savior of all things NCAA and getting us through a period of, Jim Harbaugh claiming the national championship in a year where he was suspended for 6 games. And it's on Saban to do it. And I just think the storyline writes itself at the Rose Bowl, where you have an opportunity for Saban to be the underdog, which is rare. And when they capitalize on it, like they did Saturday against Georgia. They answered. And I don't know how you don't review that incomplete pass.
Yeah, you got to at least initiate the review properly. Aside
from that, they were on point, and they've been on point. Milroe's been quite the player as of late.
You want to hear another great conspiracy theory that's in the chat right now?
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of everyone's desire to get Alabama a spot in there. Jake writes in, I've not heard this one yet, and said that the committee kept Tennessee in the top 25 to give both Georgia and Alabama an extra top 25 win when they were trying to justify either one of them in the scenario that they needed one of the SEC teams in, and that at 8-4, they're not worthy of a top 25 spot. The problem with that is they also left Clemson in at 8-4 in the top 25, I think one spot behind Tennessee.
Okay.
So that also gives Florida State an extra road top 25 win. So I don't think they took it. And you know me, I'm not Mr. Committee today. I'm not sitting here singing their praises. I also don't think they went as far as to prop Tennessee up to number 21 in the college football playoff rankings in order to devise some scheme to give Alabama and Georgia one more top 25.
They don't have to explain it that far down the list.
Yeah, here's why Tennessee's in the top 25. Because 3 of their 4 losses are to top 10 college football playoff teams, and 2 of them were on the road. They got one bad loss at Florida.
All the committee's going to point out is the win over Georgia.
Yeah.
At the end.
Well, Tennessee's in because they got a bunch of either bad to so-so wins, okay, at Kentucky, pretty good, and then they've just got the one bad loss. Then they lost to 3 teams they probably should have lost to that are top 10 in the college football playoff rankings, the final one. So that's why. Not to get Alabama in.
Now we get Washington and Texas as well, and both programs underrated throughout the year. Underrated from Texas on the road in Tuscaloosa, and then underrated after their loss to Oklahoma, where you've got Texas now getting better every single week, and then there's Washington, who's been in these tight window ball games, 6 or 7 of them now, and they find a way every single week. And the depth of the Pac-12 compared to the ACC helps them, the perception of the unbeaten. If Oregon won that game, Chad, I think the Ducks are in the committee's eyes too. They were always. I mean, you could compare it to what Vegas thought of Oregon going into that game, right? That would be the perception of the Ducks winning against Washington. And again, it's not if you lose, it's how you lose. And I think even in regards to Florida State, I truly believe the Louisville loss to Kentucky really hurt them. It
didn't help. I also think Oregon would have been in as the one-loss Pac-12 champ. I think everybody thought really highly of that conference in their last year as a conference. I think Washington, to me, is the closest facsimile to what TCU was a year ago.
Yeah.
A team that is gritty, easy to root for, finds ways to win. And being a 9.5, 10-point underdog in that Pac-12 championship game, that's the type of team that's going to find a way to make that a motivating factor and get it done again.
Yes.
And they were kind of limping into that game the way they had played leading up to it. Goes to show you one of the things you love about sports, anything can happen. Now, just because Vegas or we think something's going to happen doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Another one is Alabama being close to a touchdown underdog against Georgia and finding a way to get it done. And that didn't, I don't think, shock anyone that Alabama won that game.
No.
It's just, it's crazy today, and it's not just the Florida State disappointment. Going for 3 straight national championships and losing by a field goal, and then talking about your Orange Bowl trip.
And being the number one team that lost in the SEC title game.
Just how quickly that went away for Georgia is crazy to think about what we were talking about all year with them and how much better they got as the year went on.
We are still talking about the top teams in the NFC, Philadelphia and San Francisco. There was a big winner, and it wasn't the Eagles. Ross Tucker helps with that next.
Victoria's Secret used to be sexy. On that note, let's talk about Victoria's Secret because we continually talk about saving women's spaces, their sports leagues, their locker rooms, but we've never actually talked about their dressing rooms in retail stores. Well, now we also are getting the opportunity to talk about that one because the other day, according to an article by Newsweek, a trans woman started complaining on social media that Victoria's Secret mistreated them because they wanted to use a dressing room in one of their stores. So the trans person tweeted out this, quote, "I was trying to find a cute bra at Victoria's Secret, and they made me wait until every cis woman left the dressing rooms before I could go into one of them. They even made other cis women wait until I had my turn, so no cis woman would have to be in any of the 5 other rooms." Obviously, she's meaning at the same time. So let's just examine this for what it's worth. A biological man, right, was trying on a cute bra. Why? I don't know, because if you were to see the picture of this trans person, there's nothing for the bra to cover, that I can tell at least. I'm not sure why you'd want to wear a bra because as a woman, I can tell you that bras are not comfortable and a woman looks forward to wearing a bra. So it's very puzzling why someone would go to all of the trouble to try to find a cute bra. But that's just me talking. Anyways, they were forced to wait by sales associates in order to, of course, protect the privacy of all the other actual women who are using the same space. And to which I say, cry me a river, right? There are so many bigger problems in this world. This does not seem like one of them that should necessarily be addressed or made all that important. Also, hats off to these sales associates, by the way, because it was only a matter of time before Victoria's Secret had to respond to this trans person on X saying this: "We're sorry to hear about your experience in our store, and we'd love to speak with you directly." And then when they were asked about the incident, Victoria's Secret told Newsweek via email, quote, "We are committed to ensuring a great experience for our customers, so we always welcome feedback. Our associates are focused on providing exceptional customer service, especially during this busy shopping season." So here's how I interpreted all of this. When I read this generic response first and foremost to the trans person on X, and then Victoria's Secret's very cut and dry corporate explanation to Newsweek, I actually felt kind of convinced that Victoria's Secret may have finally learned their lesson. Because after abandoning their foundational values and going woke several years ago, that is, of course, we've already talked about this on the show several times, when they used to use the hottest women in the world to model and advertise their lingerie. And then they turned to using body-inclusive, plus-sized models, also biological men. Victoria's Secret went broke. Just looking at this year alone, in quarter 3, they're down $71 million. So clearly, they're absolutely tanking. So the company has already said it's going to reverse course, get back to sexy, but now these responses tell me that they might actually mean it. I mean, the reply on X to the trans person was very generic. Like any person would probably get complaining for any reason to any company online. Like, for example, if I'm going to complain to Delta Airlines for not giving me a great experience, sounds very similar to what they would tell me.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mile with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. And pleased to be joined by Ross Tucker, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. And you can follow him on social at Ross Tucker NFL. Ross, great to have you back on, man. Hope things are well.
Yeah, of course. Always great to talk with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and myfrontpagestory.com never disappoints. You've told us you've told us this for many years for great
gifts.
You
guys real quick.
Yeah, okay,
Did I ever
good.
show it to you?
No, let's see it.
He's got it here. He's also got a great backdrop.
Yeah,
Chad.
he does. Terrific. All the teams he's played for.
Isn't that awesome?
That's good.
This is for my wife's grandmother. So where we're from in
Oma.
Pennsylvania, she calls her Oma. Her grandparents Oma and Opa, but pretty cool. She went into a senior care community, and it was nice to have that hanging up in her room at the senior care facility. So anyway, holidays are coming up. Most of you I know don't know what to get your wife for the holidays. Just go to myfrontpagestory.com. You talk to one of their writers, I don't know, 10 minutes while you're driving to work or driving home from work. Tell them how great your wife is. They write the most unbelievable story, framed, beautiful, looks like it's on the cover of the newspaper. Your wife will cry as she realizes that you had a story written about her, and she sees the quotes like, "I just don't thank her enough for all the little things she does for the kids." That's the main one. Make sure you say that quote, fellas. Make sure you say that one right there, Jonathan. That's the key.
Chad, you are writing this down right now. You're currently on your laptop, myfrontpagestory.com.
We're going to make this happen.
Got it.
It's a great gift idea.
It's Ross.
You know who needs a myfrontpagestory.com written about them today? The special teams coordinator for the Titans.
Oh,
two block punts.
He could use like an uplifting, like happy story about, he still has people that love him and a great family and maybe not a job right now, but he gets paid for at least the rest of the year, I guess. myfrontpagestory.com, by the way.
The ninth time that it has happened since 1990, two block punts by a team, special teams unit in the same game.
Ross, you know this as a special teamer at one point in your career also. You can be mediocre on special teams and just kind of get by and keep your job, I think. You can't lose the game for your team. And the Titans did enough offensively and defensively in that game to win the game. And special teams absolutely cost them the game with the two block punts, one return for a touchdown, the missed extra point. Bad day at the office for Craig Ackerman. It cost him his job.
You know what's so funny about that? So, I did a daily NFL show, radio call-in show for like 10 years. Now, obviously, you guys referenced the Ross Tucker podcast. And now I do a bunch of stuff in the Philadelphia market. Literally nobody ever calls the station, the radio, to talk about the special teams.
Yeah.
Ever. Unless it's a disaster and it's the day after the game. Like in the offseason, you won't get one special teams call. And interestingly enough, even if the team wins and special teams are a major factor, they still won't call in and say, "Oh, our special teams are awesome. That was great." They really only call if the special teams are the reason why you lose the game. You're 1,000% right.
Are you buying the Green Bay Packers after back-to-back wins over Detroit and Kansas City, Ross?
I'm buying them in terms of a playoff contender for this year and having a good chance to make the playoffs for sure. Yeah, I think I am. I mean, it's been pretty impressive. And you look at Seattle has to play the Niners this week, then the Eagles the week after that. The Vikings feel like they're kind of going the wrong direction. Now, I haven't sat down, fellas, and like really dove into every team's remaining 5 games. But right now, it kind of feels like stock up for the Packers and the Rams and stock down for the Vikings and the Seahawks.
Yeah, the Packers' remaining schedule, Chad: Giants, Buccaneers, Panthers, Vikings, Bears.
They're going.
That's a 20
and 40
combined record.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was that. They're going.
Yeah.
They're going to the playoffs. That's amazing. I think I left them for dead when they were 3-6 maybe, or 2-5, and thought, I remember thinking after one of those games earlier in the year, Jordan Love's not the guy. Like, this guy,
same.
He doesn't have it. Packers fans are going to finally have to see what it's like to not have a legit starting quarterback. And last couple of games looks pretty darn good to me. And they're so young. I mean, they're banged up on the offensive line. They got a couple of guys playing tackle that they probably didn't expect to play tackle. And then 5 receivers. 3 of them are rookies. 2 of them are second-year guys. Their tight ends are rookies. I mean, if I'm a Packers fan, I am juiced for next year, going into next year.
So Tommy DeVito, the name sounds like a character from The Sopranos. Big Dom DeSandro definitely sounds like a character from the Sopranos, and acted like one on the sideline when he reached out and touched Dre Greenlaw and got himself kicked out. He also got the 49ers player, Greenlaw, kicked out of the game also. I know Nick Sirianni apologized to Kyle Shanahan after the game. Do you expect additional discipline, Ross, with this situation, with a staffer, security guy on the sideline reaching out and touching a player? I
do. Yeah, I do. I think that the NFL is going to send a really strong message here, because it's not equitable on multiple levels, right? So, like, evidently the officials are not able to throw a flag on a guy like that, or at least the replay officials after the fact aren't allowed to. And then every team, which I tweeted guys right after it happened at Ross Tucker NFL, that the Eagles needed their assistant equipment manager to get in a fight with Purdy as soon as possible, the way that game was going. And that's the problem, right? Like, no one cares about guys getting ejected that don't have roles that impact inside the white lines if you can get a good player on the other team ejected. So they have to send a loud message. My guess is, I don't know if there's a suspension, but at a minimum, the Eagles will be fined, and a memo. There'll be a strongly worded memo, guys, reminding teams that, only players are to be involved, and maybe a coach to kind of break things up. But, Dom, like, I know a lot about the Eagles. I'm around him a lot. He's kind of like the peacemaker when things are going on between players or whatever. Like, that's kind of his role, right? Is to make sure the guys are protected. And he was the guy that stood there when when the FedEx Field fence caved in a couple years ago. The next year, he was the one standing there to make sure it didn't cave in on Hurts. Amazing.
I realize the award's going to a quarterback, but for MVP, is this the year now more than ever, Ross, where it should be a non-quarterback, given what we've seen from Tyreek Hill, what we could see over the final stretch here, Christian McCaffrey? There are a couple of others that are worthy of mentioning, but it's a jumbled group of quarterbacks, and Purdy, you're mentioning him, he's right there at the top yet again, despite, a month and a half ago, the argument about, he's not elite. No one's ever saying he's elite. All of a sudden, San Francisco has throttled Philadelphia and Dallas.
Well, what's funny about that is a lot of people don't believe he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. So for him to be the MVP would be pretty amusing from that perspective. I would have no problem with it, by the way. I think Purdy's really good. And I think there's 2 reasons why people don't see that. Number one, his draft status, right? Like,
right.
That's one of the things I hate about the NFL, and maybe it's because of personal experience, but your draft status stays with you like forever. I mean, do you guys remember, even after the Patriots won that first Super Bowl, there was still like a healthy amount of people in Boston that thought that the Patriots should go back to Bledsoe. I mean, think about that now in hindsight, because Bledsoe was number 1 pick, big arm, and Brady was the late round pick, and they got lucky, and it was all the defense and blah, blah, blah. So draft status, number 1. The other thing for Purdy, if you watch, right, there's nothing he does that wows you. It's like the week before the Eagles played Josh Allen. And guys, I'm telling you, when Josh Allen puts his Superman cape on, nobody can play at that level. I mean, running, he was ridiculous, running for like 3 or 4 3rd and 10s, breaking tackles, making guys miss. He made some incredible throws. Some guy tweeted me at Ross Tucker NFL and said that he's like the perfect combination of Cam Newton and John Elway, and that's exactly what Josh Allen is. He did all the running of Cam, but when he throws, he looks like Elway. So when you watch Josh Allen, you can be like, wow, that guy's amazing. Purdy just drops back, gets rid of the ball quickly, on time, to the open receiver, in a good spot. They catch it, they run. You're never like, wow, did you see that 9-yard throw by Brock Purdy? He's got some Brady to him in that regard that people said for years, Brady, it was system. It was the system for Brady. It was system. Look how open these guys are. Look at his O-line. Well, meanwhile, guys look really open, and the O-line looks really good when you throw the ball in 2 seconds, right when the receiver gets out of their break, right where the open guy is, right to where the ball needs to be. And that's kind of what Purdy's doing right now. I would have no problem with him as the MVP. I do think, though, to your point, if there ever was a year for a non-quarterback, it feels like this year, although Dak's playing really well also. But I like the 2 names you brought up in terms of Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill, because I think there's an argument. If you ask the Niners who's the MVP of their offense, I'd be curious to see how many would say McCaffrey and how many would say Purdy.
What do you think about Joe Flacco's performance for the Browns yesterday?
I thought it was embarrassing for the New York Jets. That's what I thought. I mean, he goes out there and throws over 250 yards, couple touchdowns. He's got the Browns in the game, even though their defense played terrible and let Puka Nacua go crazy on them. The Browns are built on their defense. They didn't play well. Flacco came out and gave them a chance. And Flacco was way better in that game, guys, than Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle, Zach Wilson have been in any games this year. And he wanted to play for the Jets. He lives in South Jersey. He told the Jets he wanted to play for the Jets. But they're like, nah, we don't need you. Nah, we're good. You can't tell me that the Jets wouldn't have won some of those games the last few weeks if they had Joe Flacco. It's really embarrassing. And there's other teams that are trotting out quarterbacks that aren't Bailey Zappi and these guys. I think it's strange that these teams, they don't want to just go with a guy that's going to help them have a better chance to win the game. Thought he played pretty darn well. He threw that pick late that he was upset about. Wasn't a good decision or throw, but other than that, he gave the Browns a chance, which in a higher scoring game like that, you got to give him credit.
What does all this tell you about Nathaniel Hackett as offensive coordinator with the Jets? And the combo of the one disastrous year with Denver and now what's happening with the Jets this year?
Tells me it's real good to be best friends with the starting quarterback, Aaron Rodgers.
And he's not going anywhere if Aaron Rodgers wants him, right? That's the key.
They're not going to fire him because Rodgers loves him and Rodgers wants him there. And they're going to do whatever. Rodgers is job security for Nathaniel Hackett. Now, in fairness to him, I don't know if the quarterbacks that the Jets have right now can really hack it. Get it?
Love it.
You guys get it?
Well played. Well played.
I love firing in a dad joke every once in a while just to make sure everybody's paying attention.
Yep.
But no, look, I don't think the Jets quarterbacks this year are good. So I don't know how much I'm going to put on Hackett, but he's not exactly elevating their play. And I also think you see what's happened in Denver, not a good look for Hackett. But to me, I put that more on the front office for not bringing in a guy like Flacco or someone that could give the Jets a legitimate chance to win, or at least you feel like could give the Jets a legitimate chance to score double digits. How about just score double digits? How about just a touchdown?
Ross, in terms of the playoffs, I go based on, can this quarterback win in different ways over a 4-game span potentially? Is Jared Goff that guy? Can he do that? And I bring it up today because in the final minute of our conversation, I'm thinking of, well, they've had to come back against Chicago. They lose against Green Bay, and then they have to come back and survive the comeback from New Orleans. What's going on in Detroit, and is Jared Goff capable of taking them all the way?
So I think that's a really good way to look at it that not a lot of people do, which is, can this quarterback win 4 of these games in a row against really good teams? Because even though these teams we like and this team's playing well, really, like, are they going to San Francisco and to Philly and winning back-to-back? Really? My guess for the Lions would be probably not. Yeah. And I'm not even putting on Goff. Their defense has gotten a lot worse. I mean, yesterday they're up 21-0 in that game, and the defense let them come back again. Their defense has struggled against the Packers, against the Bears. The Lions' defense has really dropped off over the last month or so, which has hurt them. Goff's at least gotten a team to a Super Bowl before.
That's right.
In the Rams, although big asterisk on that one from that Saints game with the missed pass interference call against Nickel Roby-Coleman. But I do think Goff is capable of it. I think it's unlikely. I mean, I think they're clearly behind Philadelphia, San Francisco, Dallas. And with the possibility of having to win against 2 of them, maybe even 3, I guess, but
That's
2
right.
of them on the road, that I also think, guys, on some level, and we've seen this, in the NFL playoffs, doesn't it kind of feel like you got to walk before you run a little bit? Like, when's the last time a team hadn't made the playoffs in forever, and then they go win the Super Bowl? It just does. It seems like it's a little bit more methodical than that. You know, like the Chiefs, they had to lose the Patriots before they won it.
Climb the ladder a bit. Staircase.
Yeah, you gotta get a couple steps up the first year, and then maybe the next year you can do. I think this is the first year for Detroit where they make the playoffs and maybe win a playoff game.
Check out the Ross Tucker podcast, and you can follow him on social at Ross Tucker NFL. Also, myfrontpagestory.com, best gift ever. Ross, thank you for the perspective, man. We'll catch up soon.
Of course, anytime. I love talking with you guys. Thanks so much for having
Ross.
me.
Same here. Ross Tucker, one of the best right there. Love having him on.
They're really good.
Throughout the football season. Coming up, college football overreaction. My guess is the college football playoff committee will be brought up and the matchups that they have put forward and the teams they've left out. That's next on Hot Mike with Hunter Withrow across the OutKick Network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. The bold taste of a Southern legend.
6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Nice day here. Hope it is for you. Join Chad in the chat on YouTube.
Chat's been fun today. Electric, some would say.
Jake's got to be pumped. He's always in the chat talking Michigan.
Yeah.
Number 1 in the land.
Well, he's excited that I mentioned that I may be rooting for Michigan now in this playoff.
It all comes full circle.
About that.
They go from the villain to all, you know what? Screw the NCAA. Screw the College Football Playoff Committee.
Yep.
Everyone's maize and blue.
It's everyone against them.
And
I would like to see like a cross-section of America and rooting interest between Michigan and Alabama in this game. Because every other Michigan opponent, it felt like it was America versus Michigan.
Yeah.
But people hate Alabama, too.
You're saying, like, without the point spread involved here.
Yeah, people hate Alabama,
no
too.
money on the line.
And mainly because of all their success.
What if Harbaugh's just like, you know what? I figured it out. I figured it out weeks ago. We are America's team. And, yes, in fact, we've all flipped. You've all flipped towards joining us in Ann Arbor.
Jim Harbaugh opens his press conference before this game and goes on a rant saying, you know, I heard what Jimbo Fisher said about Nick Saban and he know where the bodies are buried, and that you know you got to look yourself in the mirror. And I too would like to double down on that and say that Nick Saban is an evil, evil man. I'm sure Jim Harbaugh is going to probably come up with something like that, which is ridiculous. I'm curious though to see what the rooting interest is of most of America in this game.
So we get Michigan and Bama in the Rose Bowl. That's the first game that will kick off the college football playoff matchups, followed by Texas and Washington. And in Pasadena, we get the perfect setting at 5 o'clock Eastern. And then flip over and go grab a drink or whatever and grab some dinner and come back and kick back and watch Washington try to make it all the way to the national championship game against Texas. And the Pac-12's hope to leave on top the national title in a year where Washington's headed to the Big Ten.
We got plenty of days now to hype up those games and start talking about the matchups.
New Year's 6 matchups as well. We mentioned Florida State not in, everyone knows, and we've got the matchup against Georgia now in the Orange Bowl. Ohio State and Missouri, interesting, in the Cotton Bowl. And in the Fiesta, Liberty takes on Oregon.
Eli Drinkwitz making the joke on ESPN yesterday about Connor Stallions calling him. Have you seen that? He's on the interview, and he goes, sorry, guys, Connor Stallions is beeping in. I got to take this before he asked about the matchup with Ohio State, joking that he was going to get the signals for the Buckeyes in the game. Eli Drinkwitz, he likes to stir it up. There's no doubt about it. He's a guy who's a fan of that.
See,
great season for Missouri. I mean, they're really, really good. Deserving of a top 10 ranking. They've been terrific.
And Chad, you said Caleb Williams is out of the Holiday Bowl.
Oh, I know everybody's going to be shocked because you were fully expecting to see Caleb Williams take on Louisville in the Holiday Bowl. But I hate to break the news to everyone. He is, in fact, going to opt out. This is about 6 weeks too late, according to Emmanuel Acho, who wanted him to leave college and not risk any injury after 2 losses. Basically what Mike Norvell said in his statement, which was awesome, which I may read verbatim at some point, but said, should we just tell kids, a guy on your team that's important is hurt, let's not play anymore? It doesn't matter if you win because your quarterback's hurt? What's the message here? Should I tell guys to sit out? What are we doing? I got kind of the same vibes with that decision yesterday.
And Jordan Travis with a great tweet as well.
The comeback is always just, win your games. If you wanted to be in the playoff, don't lose to Boston College or don't lose to Louisville or whoever they would have lost to in this scenario. And with Florida State, you come back and say, not only did we win every game in the ACC, we beat LSU away from home. We won at Florida in a difficult environment. It's not like they scheduled 4 patsies in the non-conference. They scheduled tough.
Well, and, this feels like, to me, Chad, the college football, the college basketball tournament away, where you schedule early against the out-of-conference, you schedule heavy, and it doesn't hurt you if you lose close,
Yeah.
Like the Texas head-to-head against Bama didn't affect them because at the end of the season, they won against Georgia in the extra game, in the SEC title game.
Yeah.
And it just so happens they're in the Southeastern Conference.
Well, I mean,
that factors in.
2 very different sports, too, obviously, in the way you crown a champion
and
the way you play
college
out the
football,
season.
every week is supposed to hold that weight.
Yeah.
And in the head-to-head, it didn't really even come down to that for Texas and Bama.
Well, what did Dan Mullen say? I've been on 2 national championship rings. Neither one of those teams finished undefeated.
And his high school one, too.
High school state championship didn't finish undefeated. So
Jason Witten, by the way,
there
won.
should be some respect laid on someone going undefeated.
Did you see that? Witten's football team in Texas, undefeated and
Really?
champion in his first year.
Will he get a college job next?
Maybe so. Maybe so. That might be an overreaction. Davey Hudson has some more to toss our way. It's time for college football's overreaction from the weekend.
Guys, it was an eventful weekend and one which, I mean, you kind of asked for it last week. I was in the same camp. We got the chaos. And I love it, and I'm interested. I think I might know where you guys are leading on some of these talking points,
Sure.
but to just get it started, I mean, the College Football Playoff Committee got it right.
They got it right. I've been very vocal about this. They got it wrong on the Florida State part of it. Now, if you want to argue you love these matchups, okay, I love them too.
Yeah.
So I don't, again, what's right? They got it right from a TV perspective, I guess. If they're doing ESPN's bidding, which I assume they are, then they got it right. But did they do the right thing? Absolutely not.
Yeah, the committee got it right for the matchups. They didn't get it right in the 4 best teams. Georgia's one of the 4 best teams. The Georgia Bulldogs are one of the 4 best teams. So if you're doing that criteria, didn't get it right. If they are leaving out a conference champion of the Power 5 that's unbeaten, did not get that right. But as far as just strong college football matchups to determine a national championship, and did Alabama earn that spot? Did they deserve that spot? Sure, you can make the argument for them. Same for Texas, winning head-to-head against Bama and then progressing each week since their loss. Washington, yes. And, of course, with Michigan. But there are other teams that are also right there and deserving. Florida State at the head of the line. But as just a football fan, I love it. I love the 2 matchups that we get in the semifinal to determine the championship matchup, which will probably lead to Davey's next question.
Well, even before that, I would just say they got it right in the stance of getting the 4 most deserving and best teams whenever you factor that in. I look at Florida State. I get it. They tried to get out of the ACC. We're at least pondering ways in which they could do that. That's what held them back. They had the worst strength of schedule when you compare it to the other 4 conference champions. I look at it from the standpoint of Alabama beating Georgia, having that best win, catapulted them above. Texas also top 3 strength of schedule when you're looking at it across the board. And, you know, it sucks that Jordan Travis got hurt. The committee didn't do a good job of explaining that, in my opinion. I think they should have just said, based off their resume, they weren't one of the top 4 teams, and that's why. But Boo Corrigan did a terrible job.
Well, Michigan's strength of schedule is at 47.
Yeah, and they're number 1.
They're down, yes. And it's lower, but, I mean, they beat Ohio State.
Right.
You dominated Penn State. They've just dominated everybody. And the problem, if you want to
they
take –
didn't dominate Penn State, but they beat them.
What was the final in that one? Well, didn't they win by 17 points? I might be wrong.
They may have pulled away late. I don't know. I don't think they dominated them. It was a fairly close game.
It never felt in question.
Yeah, they won the game.
But here's the bigger problem. And, Chad, you were talking about it earlier about this being a meritocracy. College football's never been like that. They've always had a terrible system. There's no parity. If you want the parity, the opportunity where fairness is in play, like, just be a fan of the NFL. You look at it from a standpoint, you know exactly what you're going to get. All this subjectivity around how they're seeding, they're doing all this in college football, it never was going to be fair. And we finally got the chaos.
Let's look at them in Alabama, though. They played one common opponent, LSU.
Yes.
What happened?
They both won.
You conveniently leave out the LSU neutral site 21-point win by Florida State. So then if the argument is, well, they're just not as good without Jordan Travis, I stand against that whole idea. The fact that's in the bylaws, and people keep pointing this out, that's stupid. I think it should be about a paragraph. It should be more of a mission statement. And then you can work around that. I don't like all these, but hey, if there's an injury, we'll do this, and then we might do that. That's just creating a bunch of different loopholes and avenues for them to do what they want in the end, which in this case was create the best television product. I really think that's what they wanted to get to the whole time. And in doing so, they screwed over Florida State. And also, for all this talk about the ACC sucking, what happened on the field? They were 6-4 head-to-head with the SEC. 6-4. Now, if they were, 2-8, okay, then I could buy that. But 6-4. Davey?
The metrics, whenever you're taking in strength of schedule, it hurt the ACC across the board. And I do believe that there's some saying you're talking about.
But I buy that if they scheduled 4 awful cupcakes, right? If that's the case and they won the ACC and the ACC schedule was better, they beat LSU. They scheduled them. They play Florida every year. Those are 2 tough non-conference games, both away from home. We have to factor that in also. And as Hutton said, they're right there with Michigan. And Michigan's the number 1 overall seed.
And that's they go back to winning your conference championship and why that's important. The 4 teams that did get in won their conference championships. And if you're taking Alabama's one loss, while it was not a good loss in how they played that game, is to another team that the committee viewed as one of the best in the country and ultimately won the Big 12. The other thing that goes into this is if you look at the New Year's 6 teams that made it, of those 12 teams, 10 of those teams are going to be in the SEC or the Big 10 next year. The 2 outside, Florida State and Liberty. I do think as a whole, this will go to the argument of, they're just trying to create that best TV product. But Florida State's a brand that they're eventually going to be left behind. And I throw this next question out because this is something that I'm jumping down a little bit, but the ACC will readjust revenue share to keep FSU happy after what happened today.
I think yesterday. Based on what you're saying, what they're going to do is Florida State's just going to jump to the SEC.
Yeah, it's not going to matter
at some point because, I hear that and I weep for college football and college sports because the ACC is not a conference anymore. Like, let's just let 32 teams join the Big Ten and 32 teams or whoever's left join the SEC and not worry about it if none of these teams ever have a chance.
Yeah,
I mean, Florida State's not a brand worthy of surviving of all the teams that aren't. That's crazy to me.
Florida State's already saying they can't survive moving forward, even with the adjusted revenue share.
Yeah.
So you adjust it to Florida State and Clemson. Who else is in that mix?
Do away with all conferences if this is where we're headed. Like, let's just go.
I think
the
we
NFL
know where
system.
we're going. Whenever the new TV rights deal is coming, right? With the spread of all the different networks and the streaming services, that's 3 years away.
And the ACC network's owned by ESPN.
Sure, yeah. And soon the college football playoff will be owned by more than just ESPN. That's when you have the super conference.
That's the hope.
Well, that's what
you need some competition.
There's been discussion of that, though, where they want more of the NFL model with that.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
All right, guys.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, next up, Nick Saban and Alabama will win the national championship.
I do not think that's an overreaction. I think that I could see that being a likely scenario. The way this team has played since that loss to Texas. I'm not picking yet, but Hutton, I think they've got a strong shot at winning this whole thing.
Yes, I'm not. I don't think it's an overreaction to select Bama based on what we've seen. I'm sorry, I can't go against Michigan this year.
They may be as much of a team of destiny as Washington.
And it has nothing to do with, talking about clutch aspects of Washington. We see the tight window games. Michigan's team, the players just show up and win. They don't even have to really grind out victories. They're consistent from the start to finish. That's what stands out to me. Bama's been a second-half team. Washington's been a final 3-minute team. They're in it. Texas has been improving week to week, Chad, but I look at Michigan as the most consistent, and that's why they're number 1.
I would say also
don't
sleep on Texas.
Well, yeah, same.
A team that looked really good in their game against Alabama.
I think that's a point to it. Yeah, but I still point to Michigan as the most complete, consistent team that I've seen of these 4.
All right, guys. Well, to the notion of Florida State being screwed over, if you want to, I know we're running out of time.
Go ahead.
Florida State should float the idea of boycotting the Orange Bowl.
No. I just don't think that does any good. It just makes Florida State fans feel like they did something.
Well, you need more money, but you're giving up $4 million? Screw you.
Yeah, it doesn't accomplish anything, except making fans feel good that they did something.
That's right.
We got them, guys. We got them.
Yeah,
we didn't
really stuck it to them.
Yeah.
Watch Michigan win the title while we boycott
Enjoy that
the Orange Bowl.
Clemson.
Hey, here's a feel-good story. You ready? And this needs to be talked about more. You know, lost in all of the, hey man, inspire change, Whitey's bad of the NFL. There are folks in the NFL that are, well, great dudes. The Carolina Panthers have a player named Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst is doing something that everybody in sports should do. Yeah, I know everybody in sports should try to be a rapper. Yeah, I know, like Von Miller, everyone in sports should get their side piece to not frickin' talk about your indiscretions. Yeah, I know everybody in the NFL as a wide receiver has to act like a damn idiot. I get all that. I do, I swear. But Hayden Hurst, he ain't like that. Hayden Hurst is trying to shed light on veterans with suicide and suicide prevention. That's a good thing. No, it's a really good thing. Suicide's a major issue, and it's only going to get worse. I'm going to tell you right now, this is a separate issue, but lack of parenting. Do whatever you want leads to suicide. People want direction. People want purpose. People want guardrails. People don't want to be left free. They get depressed. They get depressed if you don't have anybody giving you direction. And that's the society of parents that we're living in. Suicide rates among teenagers are at an all-time high, and I hate to say this, but they're only going to go higher. I don't know if we're allowed to say that, but that's what's going to happen. When you have a lack of parenting, when you let kids run free, drugs, alcohol, whatever they want in our current society are actually sometimes made available by idiot parents. I had a friend who let his kid drink in my house, and I'm like, you're an idiot. I love him. He's one of my best friends, but you're an idiot. It ain't cool. It ain't smart. It ain't fun. It's stupid. I can't even imagine my kids asking me to do that in our house. But anyway, that's parenting. That's where parenting is headed. But when you go overseas and you are in a war, and that war involves killing, you killing somebody, you seeing devastation, you seeing what a bomb can do to a town, the horrific things that our veterans have seen and had to do. Of course, that comes home with you. What do you think you do? You flip a switch, you come home, and you never think about it. Hell, I think about things that I did 10 years ago that weren't even bad. 20 years ago. Like, why did I do that? That's stupid. I mean, the only perfect people, as we know, are writers, media guys. They're the only ones. They're the only ones that are absolutely perfect. Even when they have affairs, even when they do stupid stuff, they write it off as, well, I was figuring life out. We, as the rest of us, don't have that same grace. And veterans come home and they're like, oh, man. Can you imagine? Let me just give you a scenario. Let's just say you are in charge of taking a hill and you and your guys gunned down 50 people. You think that just leaves you? You think that just goes away when you come back to a nation that hates you, that doesn't respect you, that doesn't help you, that treats illegal immigrants better than you? Hell no.
Just like that, the final hour is here. Hot Mic with Honey Withrow across the OutKick Network on the Monday edition. Join us in the chat, streaming live on YouTube. Listen to this great radio partner. We say thank you. Chad, so the college football playoff is set. We've got plenty more to break down of this as we now wait what feels like, well, it'll feel like a month and a half before we get to the end of the college football season, but wait till the end of the year, later this month, to get to the semifinal matchups between Michigan and Alabama.
So ready for those.
And Texas, Washington. There's some good games in between.
There's a lot of good bowl games this year, depending on who shows up and plays and doesn't opt out.
Well, that
should be good.
That's also the unknown, right? Some good merch that you can take advantage of. The OutKick store playing on a new field, and you can head over to the new OutKick store, which is just launched. Celebrate. We're offering a buy one, get one 50% off deal for a limited time. You can find our favorite polos, T-shirts, and more when you visit shop.outkick.com and you score 50% off. All you got to do is visit shop.outkick.com, add the items to your cart, and the discount will be automatically applied.
I love that one of the items is called a dad cap. That's
dad cap?
That's interesting.
Right up your alley?
I didn't know that it would, like, is that just with a bendier bill?
I don't know.
Not a flat bill?
I don't know. Does it have a fish
I got a hat here now.
With a fish hook on it or something?
I got to be honest. I've got a hat here from Old Smoky that I wear at kids' drop-off at school, and I've never been like a flat bill guy.
Yeah.
But this thing will not bend like past a certain level, and it looks pretty good on me.
Okay.
Like, it's very youthful looking. It's not total flat bill, but it's a little bit like our guy Colin over here, his hat that he's got on.
Okay.
But a little bit, maybe slightly more bend to it, but I'm rocking it. It's working. So it's not a dad cap. I need to find the definition of dad cap.
You received the compliments.
To know. Yeah. Well, I'm not receiving compliments. I'm complimenting myself. No one said a word to me about it. I just look in the mirror and say, this works. I feel like it's working. And it's not even a dad cap.
That's the
I didn't know
confidence.
dad cap was a thing.
It's the confidence level.
Until I saw that. So now I know.
Shop.outkick.com.
The more you know.
So what I do know is no matter who's winning the title in college football, there's going to be a lot of complaining and hatred about that program. And here's why. If Alabama goes on to win, well, the SEC has won 13 of the last 17 national championships. Add another one. If Texas goes on to win, well, it's a great story and it's fun. They're leaving the Big 12. They're headed to the SEC, where they have won 13 of the last 17 national championships. Washington, great for the Pac-12, but everyone's looking at it going, well, the Big Ten has now.
It's a Big Ten title.
Yeah, it's a Big Ten title. It's looked at as, well, the final game, Pac-12 goes out on top, but they're going out. There's nothing to be said or done about it after that matchup for the potential championship. And then there's Michigan, where the storyline that's dominated college football this season. What's not there is FSU. And FSU now gets Georgia in a game that's going to be, promoted as some, the prove-it game, against what was the number one team in the land until they weren't, by losing by 3 on a neutral field in the SEC Championship game. Chad, the Orange Bowl, though, is not the game I look at on paper and think, this is the matchup I can't wait to watch outside of the playoff. For me, it's one of two. It's either Oklahoma, Arizona, because Arizona has been what percentage of the college football fan base or just media in general has watched Arizona?
Yeah, not a lot.
5% has seen them play. And then there's Penn State, Ole Miss. Just because the two coaches that can't win a big game are facing off against each other. And I want to see the Nittany Lions and, the Rebels and Kiffin and James Franklin. And that's the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, that's a good of the New Year's 6 games. I think that Ole Miss Penn State game is terrific. I'm really interested in Missouri Ohio State to see if Missouri can win that. And I think that has a chance to be a really good game. I could also see a scenario where Ohio State blows them out in that game. But I'm interested to see that.
But the news about Kyle McCord kind of softens that intrigue.
Oh, definitely.
For me.
I think that should be a good game. I really like Arizona, Oklahoma, partially because the Alamo Bowl tends to deliver really crazy games. I think the Alamo Bowl and the Holiday Bowl in San Diego, year after year, seem to deliver when those games go on.
It's always a thriller.
Now with Caleb Williams not playing for USC, though, against Louisville, I'm not overly hyped up about that one. I doubt Drake May plays for North Carolina, but I like North Carolina, West Virginia in Charlotte, North Carolina in that game geographically. I like that matchup. If I'm going my favorite matchup, though, of the non-New Year's 6, I'm going to go Arizona, Oklahoma. And for the reason you said, I think for a lot of people, probably the first time you're really paying attention to Arizona this season if you're watching that game.
Yeah, and Oklahoma's offense can disappear at times.
But also Dylan Gabriel, I'm guessing, since he's entered the transfer portal, he won't be playing for Oklahoma.
And Jeff Levy's not there.
Yeah.
He's now
This is one that I feel
State.
like a week from now we could come back and have an entirely different answer based on what we learned about opt-outs of the game. So it's always hard to preview playoff or bowl games the Monday after they're all released because there's still so many variables and unknowns about what's coming.
Alamo Bowl, to your point, Chad, is averaged 66 points over the last 14 bowl matchups in the Alamo Bowl.
They get after it.
66 points. The winning team averages 40. And Oklahoma, Arizona can certainly play in that range. The other one I paid attention to was James Madison, who thankfully gets in based on where they were in the rules for qualifying teams. James Madison and Air Force, that's the bowl matchup for them. That's
Air Force is really good this year.
Just before Christmas. So, yeah. And so was JMU. They deserve better. Instead, we get Liberty.
They did. They at least get a bowl game, a reward for that season.
A couple of Notre Dame, Oregon State, Louisville, USC, which is going to be a yawner.
Tennessee and Iowa in the Citrus Bowl.
Yes.
Tennessee got a huge break to move all the way up to the Citrus Bowl, where they were looking at Gator Bowl, at one point Music City Bowl, and maybe outside chance of Tampa. But I think in order, it's basically Citrus, the Tampa Bowl, and then Gator. To get that Citrus Bowl slot was big, and they get everyone's favorite offense, Iowa, in that game.
Is it going to be 0.5 in that one too?
No, I don't think Tennessee's defense is going to get the respect of Michigan's, and
instead of 3.5 each half.
I think it's going to be like 5.5 or 6 will be the over/under for the first half. I think there's a solid chance Iowa finds the end zone in this game. I'm going to go.
Wow.
I'm going to go and throw out a prediction and say that Iowa
then
will score an offensive touchdown in this game, at least one.
Chad has scored and wrong team favored on the final.
How about that?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Picking Washington to win.
I was just a wee bit excited Friday night when that happened to go from 0-12. This is a message for the College Football Playoff Committee. This is why games matter, people. This is why you play the games on the field and not on paper. Because here I was, little old me, 0-12 on the season, did not have a single win and wrong team favored. And then on that final championship weekend, I said, you know what? I've liked Washington all year. Washington's my winner. You need to change that 0 to 9.5 because that's how many points I have now after this weekend. Hutton won again. Don't care about that right now. Congrats to Hutton, but don't care. I won for the first time. And I'll say, when we do this 5-team apiece bowl extravaganza, when we have a draft, there is a scenario where I win this competition if I can go 4-1 or 5-0 in those games. If I get enough points there, I could come all the way back and win this thing. This is why you play the games on the field and why games matter. Yeah, Friday night as an example.
It's like the Titans in the locker room saying that they're still in contention for a playoff spot.
Yeah.
Because they could still end up with 10 wins on the season.
Mathematically, I'm still alive. And I will fight to the death and to the end. And then when I'm out, I'm out.
You know what? There's still a scenario where I win this matchup. Okay. You sound like one of the Titans defensive linemen.
I will be
at 4-8.
I got to see how big the spreads are before I really say mathematically I can do it. This is like the Final Jeopardy wager. Like how many combined points in those 5 games? I can't take a lot of field goal spreads. And typically in bowl games, the lines are pretty close.
You shouldn't have said your strategy because now we can play off that.
But we know his strategy, though.
You guys just keep trying. We're gonna just keep trying to win.
I'll be fair.
There's no.
You know what? I'll just keep winning.
Yeah, there's no strategy. Just keep winning the way you've been winning all year. I'm gonna have to go for the big lines.
Yeah.
That's my strategy. Is I'm gonna have to go big.
Chad's gonna take UCLA over Boise State or something.
Yes. What's the line on that?
Troy over Duke. I don't know. It's just
Troy may be favored over
the
Duke.
Birmingham Bowl.
No Riley Leonard. Troy may be favored.
Pop-Tart Bowl.
Oh, I'm going to all these bowls. Is there a Magnolia Bowl still? If so, the Camellia?
I'm sure there are 46
I'm going for all
of
those
them.
bowls.
Are there 46 bowls? Is that right?
The crazier the corporate sponsor, that's the bowl I'm going for.
41 football games.
I see most of these lines are pretty close. I'm trying to find the biggest line as of right now.
Chad's allowed to double the spread.
UTSA is a 9.5-point favorite over Marshall. They don't even have which bowl it is listed next to these lines.
They're just going to play a home and home. This is the start of a home and home. They're going to play against each other.
South Alabama, 16-point favorite over Eastern Michigan.
All right, so you can expect me to take Eastern Michigan and Marshall, a couple green and white teams.
Kansas, 11.5-point favorite over UNLV.
Oh, I love UNLV in that game.
Boston College, 11-point dog to SMU.
Tough for Boston College. No respect.
Minnesota's got to be a big dog because they're the only team of 82 teams to not win more games than they've lost.
So they're 5-7. They got the grade exemption, or they APR.
Only one
eligible?
game lost more games than it won, or one team, and it was Minnesota. They're taking on Bowling Green in the Quick Lane Bowl, Chad.
They'll probably still be
right up your alley.
That's I believe in Detroit. I think that game is played in Detroit.
Minnesota's a 4.5-point favorite in that one.
Yeah, I figured they'd be favored.
There you go. There's your Bowling Green aspect of it. The Toastery Bowl.
I'm going for all the big points. Let's go ahead and throw that out there.
The Toastery.
Because I have to, not because I necessarily think they're going to win. It's because I
Toastery Bowl,
need them.
Chad, our first bowl, Western Kentucky and Old Dominion.
That game's actually played in 30 minutes, I think, it kicks off.
Yeah, it's underway.
Or very early December.
Florida State, 14.5-point dog to Georgia.
You know what'd be fun is if one
That's
year
how you win the
just
competition.
took the worst game, like you take Bowling Green, Minnesota, and the game is just played 24 hours after the selection. Like teams just have to get to the city and play, no preparation. We're just going to be ourselves, do that. If you get slotted
Like
to that
the first
game,
four?
you have to go. Yeah, you
You're
just
playing
get on
on Tuesday.
Like, guys, we're going to meet in El Paso, side of the Sun Bowl, and play this game. Or just right in the middle of it, you go to Kansas City, and you're playing a game on a Monday afternoon the next day. No prep. Just get them out there, play it.
Neutral
get it
site, too. You're not allowed to host that game.
I may start this bowl. If Jimmy Kimmel can have his own bowl, why not us?
That's right. That's right.
Like I'm saying, why not me in the competition of wrong team favored? I'm saying, why not us in a bowl game?
How great was Jordan Travis's response on social?
Oh, terrific.
For Florida State. He was saying, like, hey, he's heartbroken. Of course, he broke his leg. He said, in so much disbelief right now, I wish my leg broke earlier in the season so y'all could see that this team is much more than the quarterback. I thought results matter. 13-0, and this roster matches up across any team in those top 4 rankings. I'm so sorry, go Noles. Meanwhile, you had Norvell, who was asked about Jordan Travis, and this is right after the game, right after the win, and he's saying Jordan Travis means everything to this program. That was his answer about Travis not being as the quarterback and how the committee may view them. Word that a little different.
Yeah, that was
that
was not his best. I know what he's saying. Like he's like as a person, he
no
means
doubt.
so much to us. But you gotta be able to play the politics game. Like we'll get into. Both an alpha and beta from Alabama from this past weekend of how to play it, how not to play it. Yeah, that was not the best.
Well, and then all you have to do is play the games and take care of your business that's in front of you, right? That's what we all thought.
That's what everyone was saying before this weekend. Greg McElroy was on ESPN saying, "Oh, Florida State has nothing to worry about. They win, they should be in. They're going to be there." And then he's got a different argument once he saw Alabama beat Georgia, and saying that they should be out and Alabama should be in.
So right now, the first team out for the expanded playoff would be Oklahoma, because Liberty would get the 12th spot. Oklahoma, LSU, Arizona are the first 3 out.
Well, and if schedule matters, Liberty had the worst schedule in college football, the weakest schedule of everyone, and they get the nod over some other teams.
Well,
now,
they
went
get the
undefeated.
They get the automatic spot though, based on the new rule.
Yeah, but I'm saying with the rankings, like I don't know that if you're arguing in one point, the strength of schedule, theirs is the worst.
I see, yeah.
Far worse than other SMU, other teams
Kansas
that would have been
State.
up for that spot. I'm saying for the teams that were there that are group of 5.
They're ahead of K-State and SMU in the top 25.
Here's the statement from Mike Norvell, which is great. I'm disgusted and infuriated with the committee's decision today to have what was earned on the field taken away because a small group of people decided they knew better than the results of games. What is the point of playing games? Do you tell players it's okay to quit if someone goes down? Do you not play a senior on senior day for fear of injury? Where's the motivation to schedule challenging non-conference games? We are not only an undefeated Power 5 conference champion, but we also played 2 Power 5 non-conference games away from home and won both of them. I don't understand how we are supposed to think this is an acceptable way to evaluate a team. That was from Mike Norvell. And we saw the video of the response from Florida State.
Yeah.
When they weren't in. Gutting is the only way to describe it.
Leave the room and and then
I think it's well said.
And you could tell they almost, I won't say expected it, but they just kind of sunk their heads and just said whatever. I can't believe it. We literally did everything we possibly could, and now they face Georgia, and I don't know how you get up for that game. I don't.
And Georgia too, honestly. I mean, they were going for a 3rd straight national title.
Yeah.
They lose one game by 3 points. Now they're not playing for a championship.
So you guys were talking about having to release statements. I saw the ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips release a statement. If you wanted to go back, though, and point some fingers, when the Big Ten, Pac-12, and ACC formed their alliance, they voted against expanding the college football playoff to 12 teams for this season. Them voting against that ultimately cost several of their members an opportunity to play for a national championship.
But voted against it based on the criteria and the fact that at the time no one was trusting the SEC and ESPN, right?
And in the end, they were proven right to not trust the SEC and ESPN the next year. It shouldn't have mattered. Like that they should have been in with everything that went on this year. Let me say something else about the SEC. Not a great year. Georgia, Alabama, great, really good. I was not all that impressed with the SEC top to bottom this year compared to other seasons.
Not good for the Big Ten either. Coming up, alphas and betas from the football weekend.
Victoria's Secret used to be sexy. On that note, let's talk about Victoria's Secret because we continually talk about saving women's spaces, their sports leagues, their locker rooms, but we've never actually talked about their dressing rooms in retail stores. Well, now we also are getting the opportunity to talk about that one because the other day, according to an article by Newsweek, a trans woman started complaining on social media that Victoria's Secret mistreated them because they wanted to use a dressing room in one of their stores. So the trans person tweeted out this, quote, "I was trying to find a cute bra at Victoria's Secret, and they made me wait until every cis woman left the dressing rooms before I could go into one of them. They even made other cis women wait until I had my turn, so no cis woman would have to be in any of the 5 other rooms." Obviously, she's meaning at the same time. So let's just examine this for what it's worth. A biological man, right, was trying on a cute bra. Why? I don't know, because if you were to see the picture of this trans person, there's nothing for the bra to cover, that I can tell at least. I'm not sure why you'd want to wear a bra because as a woman, I can tell you that bras are not comfortable and a woman looks forward to wearing a bra. So it's very puzzling why someone would go to all of the trouble to try to find a cute bra. But that's just me talking. Anyways, they were forced to wait by sales associates in order to, of course, protect the privacy of all the other actual women who are using the same space. And to which I say, cry me a river, right? There are so many bigger problems in this world. This does not seem like one of them that should necessarily be addressed or made all that important. Also, hats off to these sales associates, by the way, because it was only a matter of time before Victoria's Secret had to respond to this trans person on X saying this: "We're sorry to hear about your experience in our store, and we'd love to speak with you directly." And then when they were asked about the incident, Victoria's Secret told Newsweek via email, quote, "We are committed to ensuring a great experience for our customers, so we always welcome feedback. Our associates are focused on providing exceptional customer service, especially during this busy shopping season." So here's how I interpreted all of this. When I read this generic response first and foremost to the trans person on X, and then Victoria's Secret's very cut and dry corporate explanation to Newsweek, I actually felt kind of convinced that Victoria's Secret may have finally learned their lesson. Because after abandoning their foundational values and going woke several years ago, that is, of course, we've already talked about this on the show several times, when they used to use the hottest women in the world to model and advertise their lingerie. And then they turned to using body-inclusive, plus-size models, also biological men. Victoria's Secret went broke. Just looking at this year alone, in Q3, they're down $71 million. So clearly, they're absolutely tanking. So the company has already said it's going to reverse course, get back to sexy, but now these responses tell me that they might actually mean it. I mean, the reply on X to the trans person was very generic. Like any person would probably get complaining for any reason to any company online. Like, for example, if I'm going to complain to Delta Airlines for not giving me a great experience, sounds very similar to what they would tell me.
6th and Peabody, our location. Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us. Hot Mike with Head and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. So, not an alpha move for the New York Jets today, where first it's put out there that Zach Wilson doesn't want to really. He's hesitant to return as the starting quarterback for Robert Saleh.
They were trying to give the job back to him, and he said, "No, thanks.
Yeah,
I'm good."
That Zach Wilson wouldn't be. Robert Saleh said in his presser today, Wilson wouldn't be with the team if he was reluctant to be our quarterback. And then he went on to say, "quote He wants the ball." They have not decided who's going to start Sunday against Houston, but I mean they've got Boyle, who was benched, Trevor Siemian, just awful, and then there's Wilson, who is now all of a sudden back in consideration, Chad. And also out of consideration, Aaron Rodgers' return to the field. We knew that last week, whenever he actually did return to practice. He won't be out there.
Yeah,
he said Wilson gives them, quote, the best chance to win, is what Saleh said.
Just let's stop talking about winning for a second if we're the Jets. Like I started out really liking Robert Saleh, watching Hard Knocks, and as the season has gone on, I have grown more and more tired of everything that he says about this team and about everything.
Well, he had everything lined up, and then all of a sudden Zach Wilson's back after he benched him last year in early December. 4 snaps in.
Let's just get to the finish line here if you're the Jets, and then you got an offseason where Aaron Rodgers can get completely healed up and you can make some moves to try to win big next year. That's all anyone's worried about. Hey, Florida State and Florida lawmakers are still trying to win big right now. I knew this was inevitable, and as outraged as I am by Florida State not being in, this is too much because now Florida lawmakers have met, and they are proposing state legislation to protest Florida State not making the college football playoff. It's unclear what direction a bill could take, but legislators are discussing a few options. This from Front Office Sports. You can't do anything. No. So let's stop the grandstanding, just politicizing this and saying, I'm on the side of Florida State just for votes or whatever you're doing. Stop it. We're not going to have a bill in Florida through Florida lawmakers. It's going to prevent Florida State from not going to the Peach Bowl and going to the college football playoff instead. Just stop it.
Chad,
even if I'm Florida State and I'm Mike Norvell, I'm thinking this is silly. Just quit.
If only, things were taken as serious in other aspects of life instead of just college football and fandom and recruiting and everything else.
This is a travesty of justice.
Yeah. How dare them?
I remember there was a video. One of my first games as a student at Tennessee was the phantom catch by Jabbar Gaffney for Florida that cost Tennessee the game in the end. That was a catch, no catch. They rolled a catch, but this was replay, not anything. So it was called a touchdown on the field, and it stood. And there was video of some fan just standing right over the refs as they left the field, and just over and over he was saying, "This is a travesty of justice. A travesty of justice." I mean, it was like a scene out of A Few Good Men when Jack Nicholson's getting escorted out of the courtroom. And I'm thinking, man, I love this sport so much that this is the reaction to it now.
Classic college football.
A travesty of justice.
3 months.
All you've done here today is weaken an entire nation. That's all you've done, College Football Playoff Committee.
Chad,
so much fun.
We lead off our alphas from the weekend with Nick Saban, and you say for good reason.
Yeah, Nick Saban got it done this weekend.
Again.
Look, that team did not look like Bama last year at times with 2 losses. Didn't look like Bama because they didn't up in the college football playoff either. And then they play Texas, and you look at Nick Saban's home record in Tuscaloosa, it is remarkable over the years as the Alabama head coach. They didn't just get beat by Texas. They got whipped a little bit. They got pushed around in that game.
Yep.
Very early in the season, but immediately the thought is, man, something is wrong when there's a carryover, it feels like, from last year to this year. The next week, they're bad against South Florida on the road. And what do? It's like a new team showed up week after week, getting better and better. Offensive lineup's terrible. early in the year got better and better. Defense for Nick Saban always improves as the year goes on. They improved again this year. Jalen Milroe looks like a pro. He's dropping in a bucket on 4th and 31 to Isaiah Bond to beat Auburn. Then they come out this weekend, and they're the ones to knock off Georgia. And there's a poetry to this that it was Kirby Smart needing to get past Nick Saban, right, at one point, to win that national title, then to win another one, and to get to that position where they're the new Bama. Mm-hmm. And they're going for a 3rd straight national title. They're the dynasty. And then it's also poetry that in the end, the cyclical nature of it, it is Nick Saban that delivers the death blow to Kirby Smart, eliminating him from a chance at winning that 3rd straight.
Here's what turned for Bama this season to me, and it's more than just Milroe because he's the important part here. Chad, it's number one, they have been able, and they did this Saturday against Georgia. Only one snap, I believe, they brought 5. That's crucial. Number two, they're winning the battle up front. Number two, the penalties that I've harped on for the last 2.5 years at inopportune times, just the operational aspect that you got 10 to 12 penalties a game. What's going on here? And some of them were 12 men on the field or needing to call a late timeout because you didn't have you needed one more on for a punt coverage or whatever it might be, rushing on the 11th guy. And then the other is they're not turning it over. They didn't turn it over either. So with that, and as long as Milroe is doing this, where he's just ascending, he's found his grip on the program. He's the next guy. There's a lot of pressure to be the next guy with this lineage of quarterbacks they've had recently. And we knew last year Milroe just didn't fit that mold, right?
Yeah.
When we saw him. And they stuck with him all offseason, benched him. Now he's back, and he's like 4th in the Heisman odds right now, which is also just bizarre to see his name there for the first time right at the end of the season. I agree. Saban's done a great job with this group, and he'll have a chance to finish on top yet again, which is normally where he does when no one really wants to see it. And I think this year he's getting more of the accolades because they missed it last year.
Yep.
He's stumping for the idea of a 2-loss team that lost twice on the last play of the game, getting into the playoff. They didn't. And this year they're a 1-loss team that gets in. There's controversy about it. But I think more than ever, we're seeing a group, a fan base, I'm not talking about the Tide fan base. By and large, the college football fan base is going, man, this is a great job this year.
Yeah.
Based on what the national conversation was.
There's no doubt. This is not a subjective argument. It's objectively a very good job done by Nick Saban with this team from where they started to where they finished. The San Francisco 49ers started well. I think they're going to finish just fine. They finished well yesterday in Philly. That was an alpha performance from the 49ers, starting with Nick Sirianni apparently getting into a confrontation with 49ers players pregame. 49ers have some sort of issue with the Eagles because the Eagles feasted on them when they lost Brock Purdy in the NFC Championship game last year. This is something that has been going on throughout the offseason. Both sides were fired up for this game. You got Big Dom, the Eagles head of security, pushing Dre Greenlaw out of the way, getting himself kicked out, getting Dre Greenlaw kicked out. But in the end, the 49ers, every time they needed an answer, a screen pass to Deebo Samuel where he's untouched for a touchdown. I mean, this offense was humming yesterday. Alpha performance for those Niners.
Look at what they've done against the Cowboys and the Eagles. Hammered them. The combined score, 84-29. And they finished yesterday's game in what was a 42-19 rout with drives, touchdown drives, 6 consecutive. 85, 90, 75, 77, 75, and 47 yards. And then you just had to run off the clock. Dominant. Shanahan said it's a hell of a win and a hell of a team. He's right. But here's the truth in all of it. I think that we'll miss the point on Philly. The NFL schedule makers did them no good deed here. This is their 3rd game in 13 days.
Yeah.
This is San Francisco's 1st game in 10. Keep all of that in mind whenever you're mentioning, there's a reason why Vegas had them favored by 3 on the road in Philly. Well, all of this combined with the weather elements and everything else, Philly's going to be right there too. I can't wait for the rematch of the postseason.
Another NFL beta, the New England Patriots defense.
Oh, the alpha. The alpha is the defense.
Sorry, yeah. I think
the only thing
right now. I think beta. I think Patriots. So I immediately went to that.
The alpha of
the New England Patriots offense. We'll get to betas here momentarily. The defense for the Patriots. They've held opponents to 10, 10, and 6 points in their last 3 games, Hutton. So Bill Belichick's side of the ball, getting it done right now for the Patriots. Nothing else is going.
And they are the first team to lose those games by a defense that has a defense that's done that. That's held had 3 consecutive losses with a defense that's held the opponent to 10 points or less.
Let's flip and go to betas now.
Yep.
The Patriots offense, 6-0, 6-0, a loss to the Chargers. By the way, Brandon Staley continues to get to lecture the media at that point, saying, guys, defense isn't the problem here. Defense isn't the problem. We won this game, and we scored 6 points because of my defense. That was a miserable game.
The Patriots Jets this week? Oh, no, that's the season finale. Can we go ahead and bet the under in advance for Patriots Jets under?
I need an advanced over-under in that game. Definitely.
Yeah, that's going to be awful. Also, you've got Thursday Night Football, Patriots and Steelers under. Always take the under. Belichick has no words. He's like, well, what do you want Bill O'Brien to do? He's like, well, we're just looking to actually improve, do some good things on offense.
Steelers could be honorary mention betas this week, too. That's a bad home loss to Arizona.
And a big, 2 different weather delays in that benefited Arizona.
And I still love Mike Tomlin post-game, just sits down and, well, pretty much nothing went right today in this game. We didn't do anything well. And that's just some JV football that we saw, that we put out there today.
First beta of the weekend, Craig Aukerman, the Titans special teams coach. Yesterday against the Colts, the Titans had 2 blocked punts on back-to-back series within 4 plays. Within 4 plays being ran, you had the special teams allow 2 blocked punts. And really, the first one's returned for a touchdown where they overloaded one side for whatever reason. No one had the wherewithal to actually recognize that they were outnumbered.
Guy went untouched.
Comes through.
It's an easy block and touchdown. You'll see it was a 1-hop, catch the ball off the block, and jog it into the end zone.
Next possession, 3 and out. And on that punt, Ryan Stonehouse, their punter, it's really a fumble. It's really a fumble, not even a block punt, because they had the gunner run off the edge, lay out, and didn't even have to lay out. He was there so fast because no one even recognized the fact that they were outnumbered again. And Ryan Stonehouse has his knee blown out by the rush because the gunner hits the punter and knocks him out for the season before he could even attempt to punt the football. That's how bad it was. Today, Aukerman fired. This is the 9th time since 1990 that a team has blocked 2 punts in the same game. I don't know the stat for back-to-back blocked punts in a short span of 1 3 and out.
So to recap, 2 blocked punts the Titans allowed, the second of which nearly broke the leg but blew out the knee of the plant leg of their star punter. That's right, I said star punter because he's the best player on the Titans team and he's the most effective.
Yep.
So Craig Aukerman got their punter nearly killed and lost a leg in the injury, forcing Ryan Tannehill, who's been injured, to come in and hold on the next extra point that was missed by Nick Folk. That was the difference in the game. That would have made it 26-25 instead of 25-all in the end. And that was the difference in the football game.
Brutal.
And they go to overtime and lose. That will cost you your job.
Chad, Greg Byrne, also beta of the weekend.
I get sick and tired of hearing anything from Bama, anything remotely complaining. Given their status as a program, given all the winning they've done, given all the titles, given their relationship with ESPN, that half the time their shows look like a Nick Saban infomercial. I don't want to hear from Greg Byrne before the ratings come out saying, well, we're going to have to reevaluate games we play. We shouldn't play that Texas game. We shouldn't have played it if we're not in the playoff. And I'm thinking, dude, stop threatening that you're going to not play a tough non-conference game because you may get left out of this one college football playoff. And, oh, by the way, they weren't. It actually helped them in the end, probably with strength of schedule. So they're in.
You know what helped them too?
Come on.
Playing the SEC Championship game, which they're also debating whether or not they're going to continue that whenever the playoff field expands. So
I think all
if
these
you're
are
going
going
to flip
away.
the argument, beating Georgia helps you get in.
That's true. That's a good
So
point.
you better play this game.
Yeah, they're not in if that SEC championship game does not happen.
Right.
Getting that one huge opponent at the end of the year. That was number one. That's a good point.
Coming up, that's my quarterback. We'll discuss quarterback decisions and, well, hypotheticals for the NFL and more. Also in college. Some good examples and some, well, maybe some bad choices as well. We'll debate that straight ahead. Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick Network rolls on.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement, and today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, bold taste of a Southern legend.
Hot Mike with and with Row rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, you mentioned the bad loss for the Steelers to Arizona. Arizona winning on the road. They're also out of pocket with Pickett. Kenny Pickett out 2 to 4 weeks with an ankle procedure.
Bring on Mitch Trubisky.
Trubisky's
back, baby.
He's back, and he's going to be playing Thursday night as they take on the Patriots. Steelers will then play Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Seattle, and then Baltimore to end the season. And, I mean, how quickly the AFC North has flipped from the team that could get 3 and at one point they had all 4 in to the quarterbacks just going down, just dropping.
I would like to know the stat of quarterback injuries this year as opposed to every other year, and where it ranks with the amount of games played by backups.
Well,
sure, it's not difficult to find.
It's
but this has to be up there, right?
By and large, I think you see your backup play at some point during the season.
Yeah, but I'd like to know amount of games started by backup quarterbacks this year.
Well, we know they set the record for the rookies.
Yeah.
Right now, the Steelers have the 5th seed in the AFC with Trubisky coming in. Again, short week here as they take on New England, but at least the saving grace is it's New England. They're at 7-5.
They're going to be right at home in a 9-3 game.
All of a sudden, don't look now, but the Indianapolis Colts are 7-5 with Gardner Minshew. And
a guy that the Titans can't do anything against.
I know.
It's unbelievable. Dude is just dancing like a maniac in the locker room after the game.
Cleveland continues to fall, but they've got they're right now the 7th seed. Houston is right behind them, and then Denver behind Houston. Bills remain in the 10th spot. They had the bye week. They're at 6-6. And just for the flip side of it, just at the back end of things, Cowboys, Vikings, Packers right now are your wild card teams in the NFC, followed by the Rams, Seahawks, Buccaneers, and Saints. Let's go ahead and just mention the Rams and the Seahawks because I don't think Buccaneers or Saints out of the NFC South stand much of a chance.
Rams were able to take care of Joe Flacco yesterday.
Inconsistency, yeah.
Got it done.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Plenty of quarterbacks to discuss. T.O. certainly knows a thing or two about that.
It's my quarterback.
What's up, guys? It is in the hunt time when we look at this playoff picture. And I'm going to throw a graphic on the screen, and there are 6 teams on this graphic we're going to focus on. You currently have the Steelers at 5, Browns at 6, Colts at 7, Texans at 8, Broncos at 9, and Bills at 10. And when you look at those teams, which quarterback do you trust the most to get his team in the playoffs?
So I'll start here. There's really 2 that I'm eyeing, and it's mainly about the schedule for me.
Yep.
That's remaining. C.J. Stroud is the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and it sounds crazy to say I'm trusting the rookie more than everyone else out there, but given the schedule and what I've seen from him, the Tank Dell injury, not good for that offense.
No, out for the year.
I'm still going to lean on C.J. Stroud and what I've seen so far through the season. That mixed with a poor schedule the rest of the way. Give me C.J. Stroud, the guy I have the most trust in to lead their team to the playoffs. Honestly, second place for me would be Gardner Minshew, also in the AFC South, given the weak schedule left for them.
So C.J. Stroud for me is the answer here of the quarterback I trust the most, just because it's been consistent. He does turn the football over, and they have their fair share of issues. But of the group that I'm looking at, just the top 3, yeah, I'm looking at Stroud. But hang on one moment though, because within this list that Davey has presented, the Buffalo Bills in their upcoming schedule, Kansas City, Dallas, Chargers, Patriots, Dolphins. Chad's basing this off the schedule. I am doing that as well. But Josh Allen is in the elite category of quarterbacks in the National Football League. We should not be giving him a pass by not mentioning his name. And we're mentioning a rookie and Gardner Minshew as the quarterbacks we trust enough to get their team to the playoff. This should be Josh Allen's best work right here.
You're right.
Kansas City is no daunting task anymore. I'm sorry. But they check out the NFC North. Check out the NFC North. Detroit also did that on the road at Arrowhead. Buffalo can beat them. How do I know that? Because Green Bay just did. Buffalo can beat them. And looking at their upcoming schedule, Dallas, again, that's rough. Chargers, no. That should be a victory for Josh Allen's Buffalo Bills. The Patriots should be a victory for Josh Allen's Buffalo Bills. And quite frankly, in the final week of the season, Miami, who we've preached all year, well, they got to prove it against a team that's good. Buffalo won. They should beat them again. This should be Josh Allen's best work, not an afterthought. That is deserving of the answer. But, Chad, I'm not mentioning him because at 6-6, they're very consistent at being inconsistent, and so is he. It's the same. If you played me a post-game recap, his thoughts of week 1 against Detroit or told me it was week 12, which game was this? I couldn't tell you. Could not tell you because it's the same song, different verse in regards to the mistakes that are being made.
And when you reach this point in the season, it's just who you are. They're just inconsistent. There's no correcting it. This is their identity now at this point in the year. That's a great point about Josh Allen.
Chad, you mentioned C.J. Stroud, locked up Offensive Rookie of the Year. I do want to let you know that Puka Nacua still has a chance. He's second in the odds, but
plus 80,000. What are the odds?
It's plus 2,500, okay. So we won't really dive in. But
he's got about the same chance I have of winning wrong team favored after the bowl picks. So
I'll give you that one, guys.
Odds.
If C.J. Stroud is injured and he's out, does Puka Nacua win? What do the odds change, or is it still like, oh, you know what? The votes have already been cast.
I still think he wins. I think just on what he's done, he could not put up another.
Stroud.
He could not gain another yard this season and still win it.
All right, guys, switching it up. I know a lot of the conversation today has been about the college football playoff selection, and when we look at the 4 quarterbacks that have gotten their team into the college football playoff, which one has to be on their A game in order for their team to ultimately win it all?
Chad, for me, it's Jalen Milroe. Because Jalen Milroe, when on his A game, is the team that Nick Saban has coached back to the college football playoff. And when Jalen Milroe is not in his A game, they don't wait around too much longer before making a change. They had to figure that out. They were not getting his A game. And, well, he's been playing very well. He's very confident. I love the moxie that he's had the last month. But if he shows up and he's shaky, if he shows up and he's looking to run after a first read, which, again, I'm not expecting him to. But if he's off, Bama is off, and that affects everything.
I don't know that any of these teams are winning without an A performance from their quarterback, at least in one of the 2 games, right? Maybe they get by because of a dominant running game. If you're Michigan, let's say, if you're J.J. McCarthy. I think all of them need it. If I'm going to pinpoint the one that has to have it, it's the quarterback of the team with the least amount of NFL talent on the roster. That's Washington. Washington is the least talented team of these 4. They're very talented. They've got some pros in that team, but they're not Michigan. They're not Texas. They're not Alabama from a top-down talent standpoint.
The number of positions, yeah.
And I think Penix is the most consistent of these quarterbacks in the field. And he definitely – but it's going to take an elevation of his performance, I think, to pull this thing off. He's going to have to be A++. And he's very good. He's capable of it. But he's got to be great if Washington's going to do this.
Chad, to make your point heard even louder, in terms of the 247 Sports composite talent rankings, Washington is last of these 4 teams. They're ranked 26. They don't even have 1 5-star on their team.
There you go. But Penix Jr. can make a lot of those guys look like 5 stars with his play. So he's key.
And what's crazy, Hud, is I agree with you. And Bama has the most talented roster going into this playoff. But, yeah, if Milroe's struggling, like Michigan's the one team where it's like, I think they could put in somebody for J.J. McCarthy and I would still feel good about their chances.
But here's the thing about Bama. With the 10 penalties and, missing a chance at a touchdown and instead throwing a pick in the red zone, whatever, they've had the quarterbacks that could bail them out of that. Bryce Young was going to keep you in the game. So if they're going to revert back to something like that where they're going to have 9 to 12 penalties in a game against Michigan, they can't do that and have the version of Jalen Milroe prior to them turning the season around. They've got to have the version of Jalen Milroe that's closer to the quarterback lineage that he's replaced, and that's what he's done to his credit. But they can't replace the impact that he's had by just being steady, making the right reads, not turning the football over, and allowing the defense to just go to work. He does that.
Guys, last week on That's My Quarterback, I asked you who was the next member of the Heisman House. And as we went into this weekend, we really had the scenario that really convoluted the entire discussion because you had Bo Nix, who was the heavy favorite at the point, losing to Michael Penix Jr. and Washington. And now the updated odds have Jaden Daniels minus 1,200, Michael Penix plus 900, Bo Nix plus 1,500, and then Jalen Milroe plus 10,000. But based off the new odds, just where we're going, who are you expecting to be the next Heisman candidate or that next Heisman Trophy winner?
I want it to be Penix, and I would say that's probably a pretty smart bet if you want to just put some money on some heavy odds. Plus 900, you said?
Correct.
Right now for Penix. Hutton, I think he should have won the Heisman with that performance against Oregon.
Well,
in that win.
He's my answer.
Yeah, that's who I want to win. My answer here is different. My vote, if I'm voting for the Heisman, is Michael Penix Jr. But who I think is going to win is typically who Vegas has the odds way in the favor of winning, and that's Jaden Daniels. So my pick is Penix.
So I say Michael Penix Jr. because I'm a believer in the process that's a bad one, that the Heisman voters, all 900,000 of them, tune in to the marquee matchups whenever they're actually on national TV. They don't watch a ton of West Coast or East Coast, depending on which coast you're biased to. They don't see a lot of these teams play until it's actually the game where the nation's tuned in for the most part. They were watching Washington and Oregon, and it's hard for me to believe that a quarterback who wasn't playing this past weekend is going to jump Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix, who was the favorite going into the weekend for the Heisman vote. So if they're the favorite, if Nix is the favorite in Vegas, and once again Michael Penix Jr. beats him head-to-head and has the performance that he did, it's hard for me to say that guy's not going to get enough votes. However, it is a voting group that is very groupthink. And all I saw over the weekend were the grandstanding for Jaden Daniels. And don't overlook, no one's overlooking the SEC, trust me. But to not have Penix Jr. in the conversation, to act like it's a bad vote, is ludicrous, based on the fact that we've seen the body of work throughout the season. And it's not Jaden Daniels' fault that Brian Kelly can't put together a defense. But, I mean, results are results. And I've seen one more result against a really good team from Michael Penix Jr.
Guys, the man that Michael Penix Jr. took over for was Jake Browning, and he's actually going to be in action tonight on Monday Night Football, where we have the Bengals going down to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. Jacksonville currently a 10-point favorite. The total on that one set at 40.5. What do you think is going to ultimately happen here later on?
So one prediction I've been good on, anytime touchdown scores. Got it right again with DeAndre Hopkins on my recommendation on Friday for the Titans. That has big days typically against the Colts. I went with a parlay. Joe Mixon and Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley both have plus odds. I feel good about both those guys finding the end zone tonight. So Joe Mixon anytime touchdown, Calvin Ridley for the Jags anytime touchdown. Jags get it done, though, but I don't think that's a pretty big line. I would probably take Cincinnati plus the points, but give me Mixon and Ridley anytime touchdowns.
The Bengals are 1-25 in road or neutral site night games over the last 25 years. Cincinnati, they've won only 4 games without Joe Burrow. This has Jacksonville written all over it. So I would lay the points, and I would take the over, because if you think Jacksonville's winning by 10 or more, there should be more than 40 points combined in this game. And Jacksonville's defense will also allow some big plays, some splash plays. And if Chad's hitting on Joe Mixon, then I think the over hits, surprisingly, in this.
May we all be winners. May we all be winners tonight. That's my solemn prayer.
Yes. Even Florida State?
Florida State already lost, unfortunately. Through no fault of their own, even though they had no losses on the season.
Back at it tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow.